What is going on, everybody? How are we doing this evening? We're back with another week of reviewing the Chicago Bears, this time over their Thanksgiving game that happened better just about a whole week ago, last Thursday, as they took on the Detroit Lions at 11 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day. Now, I can't help but first of all start out and say I hope everybody had a wonderful and restful Thanksgiving season. Hopefully you got some time off of work or off of school or whatever may have you. But yeah, no, I mean, this is a pretty good place to start, Akusai, right? I mean, at the very least, everybody's pointing at each other, very Bears Lions. And hey, you know what? It was a Bears game. It was a Bears game where each team was fairly evenly matched. And honestly, for probably both Lions and Bears fans, that was a bit of a nice change. I mean, now granted, that's where things get strange because I feel like the Bears have been going kind of toe-to-toe with the overwhelming majority of their last bunch of teams that they've played. They went toe-to-toe with the 49ers, at least on offense. On defense, they got pretty well pants. They went toe-to-toe with the Steelers. They went toe-to-toe with the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens. And they went toe-to-toe with the Lions, just barely pulling out a 16-14 win. But, I mean, I think the weird part about this season, because right now, if I could, Shane, no kidding, I feel like the complicated part in talking through this game, if I could be really honest, is we could tell the story of the game just like we normally do. We could take an outlook on what went well, what went poorly, where do things get better, where do they get worse, so on and so forth. But I mean, right now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I think everybody kind of knows this, but Matt Nagy is probably on his way out in Chicago. So while we could go over what the Dalton-led offense looks like, and we probably will, I mean, I love talking about offense, in particular the Bears offense, and there's a good bit to go through. The offense is almost 100% going to change, especially if the head coach changes. So, well, you could talk about the quarterback. Well, Fields didn't play. He's hurt, out with a bruised rib. May not be back for Arizona even. So then we're talking about Dalton, the backup. Exactly, Mike. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, that we will talk about, but I definitely am laughing as I just think about what these reviews are going to look like for the rest of the season, because the Bears are now 4-7, 2 losses away from 4-9, and probably being officially mathematically eliminated from the playoff hunt. I mean, you got to hope that's coming at some point, or at least think it's coming at some point. So as we go through the rest of this, truly, if you guys have a better idea than I do for where we want to go with it, specifics you want to talk about, I'm all ears, because this was a game that by the middle part, we didn't have Roquan Smith, we didn't have Allen Robinson, and I guess the Bears, but you get the idea. I mean, Allen Robinson, not playing. Roquan Smith, not playing. Akeem Hicks, not playing. Khalil Mack, he wasn't playing. Kendall Vildor, a young guy, not playing. Duke Shelley, not playing. Like, whether good young guys or bad young guys, the Bears have so many pieces missing right now that if you consider the head coach a derelict firing waiting to happen, the quarterback too hurt to play, there's not a lot to evaluate right now. Like, that's what has become, I guess, kind of humorous about this kind of game, is the Bears won 16-14 with their backup quarterback, with a head coach that finally outcoached his opponent for not without lack of trying. I mean, to be totally fair, right? I feel like this was one of Nagy's better games. He tends to call better plays, just calling it as it is, right? The Dalton offense is the best offense that I have seen. Lester, thank you so much. But so the Dalton-led offense that I saw against the Rams, that I saw against Cincinnati, the Dalton-led offense, honestly, that we saw against, the Lions, Mike, but also Baltimore. There's something about Dalton and a skill set that I tend to think is making Nagy feel comfortable. I can't tell if it's Laser or if it's Nagy in particular, but there's something there, and I don't want to dig too deep into it because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to the future. But we can start at the top and go for it. It's just funny because I feel like normally we would be either talking through Fields' impact, how's he growing, he's the future of the franchise, but instead We've got a backup quarterback in. We've got a head coach we think is going to be gone. We've got a defensive coordinator that if if Matt Nagy gets fired, the defense might change because it's very common to change your defensive coordinator. So there's a whole lot of we're waiting. I think we're all waiting to the end, right? But let me go ahead and turn this away so that I don't get in trouble. Now it's just a white styrofoam cup, right? But exactly, Derek. I actually think that's a really good way to put it. That the perfect Nagy quarterback is probably Alex Smith. So the closer you get to that kind of mobile, short-throwing West Coast guy, the more it feels like Dalton at least could contribute in the huddle and say, let's call slants and arrows. And Nagy goes, sure, that sounds good. But I can't help but feel as if there is, just before we get into anything, to give you some high-level thoughts on the offense. I get the impression that veteran quarterback, whether it's Foles, who liked to change everything at the line of scrimmage to the point where I think we saw it, him and Matt Nagy got into a whole, they started butting heads to the point of how often Foles changed the plays. But a veteran quarterback seems to really help Matt Nagy. I can't tell if that's an indictment on his play calling because his play calling without that veteran quarterback, without Chase Daniel, without Andy Dalton, without Nick Foles, let's take Trubisky and let's take Fields, seems awfully easy to read into. Whether it's curls in the end zone, whether it's the same route concepts over and over, whether it feels like they're not calling plays. Like with Mitch Trubisky, we saw tons of out routes, which he struggled to throw. With Justin Fields, we see tons of middle of field routes, not a lot of out routes, which are his favorite. It's wild to think of just how different the play calling tends to be with a younger quarterback than it is with a veteran quarterback. And I have started to think that is something that's there for a reason, basically. So whether it's Brian Dabble, whether it's, I don't know, pick one, right? John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh's offensive coordinator, or Greg Roman, or Byron Leftwich, the head coaching thing, we'll get there when we get there. But whoever it is that comes into Chicago, I'm hoping that they're better at helping the rookie get the most out of the rookie, or in this case, it'll be a sophomore, younger quarterback that hasn't had 10 years in the league. You get the idea. Than it is, oh gosh, I don't know what to call here. Andy, do you have any ideas? Or Justin, do you have any ideas? And Justin goes, man, I've been in the NFL for less than a year. What do you want me to tell you right now? I guess we could run this. And you get the idea. I don't know what those meetings are like, but it's at least watching this Lions game, and I'm sure there's a degree of it that's just the Lions, right? But at least as I watch this football game right here, I feel like Nagy is much more flexible when it comes to calling plays for a veteran, because we've seen it with Chase Daniel against the Lions actually a bunch of times. We've seen it with Foles in that Atlanta game, even Foles in some of his slightly better games, like the New Orleans game comes to mind, because Foles had some clunkers, but that's neither here nor there. He seems better with a veteran than he is with a rookie, and maybe after Trubisky and with Fields, there's some aspect to that that's on him. But I digress. We're through the opening monologue. I feel like I saw Lester throw $5 in to talk about the defense, and that actually I want to. I think starting with the defense is a great idea because we saw something rare, and we actually have a decent example here of of isolating Eddie Jackson. We have seen the Bears defense for quite some time without Eddie Jackson, and it's not looked great. So then Eddie Jackson comes back, and immediately, yes, it's just the Lions. Yes, it's Jared Goff. There's a lot to dig into here, but immediately the Bears defense holds the opposing offense under to 14 points, not a ton of yardage. Let me get the specific total here. I've got the stats pulled up. See, got the ESPN window right here. But so they hold Jared Goff to under 200 yards passing on 25 attempts. That's 170 yards passing, 76 yards on the ground. So a grand total of only, let me get the specific number. They hold the Lions to only 239 yards of offense and 2 scores, which, hey, it's not the perfect game. And the offensive Akusai It's funny you should ask. Eddie Jackson did not contribute to any offensive holding penalties, and they definitely helped out. But I did want to talk about just what he means to this defense. Now, we're going to start off with a penalty, but here's number 4. You obviously know, right? But it's like, it's the sort of thing where Jordan, more than anything, I wouldn't say judge Eddie Jackson. I would more say watch him visually. Watch it how much Eddie Jackson moves compared to almost literally any other player on the Bears defense. We've seen for weeks a whole bunch of static defense, and I just want you to watch the way that he moves pre-snap, because I do think it has an impact. It's not like we need to just suddenly ring the bell and be like, Eddie Jackson's this ultra lockdown safety. I actually really think that Eddie Jackson's quite a good player, but I more than anything want you to put on your scouting glasses, right? And just watch the way Jackson moves pre-snap, because I think he's, without a doubt, the most confusing player on the Bears defense. So we start off with this play right here. So Quinn jumps off sides on that last one. It's 1st and 5, right? But so the Lions shift into what's called a bunch set. It's called a bunch set because the receivers are bunched up. That can't surprise you, right? But what I think was really neat about it is that over the top of that, and remember that this is Burns, Eddie immediately shifts over and gets right on top of that bunch. So you've almost got a simulated bunch between the defenders right here. And so on that first play of the game, 1st and 5, Goff takes a look. He sees Eddie Jackson. The Bears have dropped Robert Quinn into coverage, would you believe it, with Burns playing what looks like sort of it's like a slightly deeper flat assignment on the other side of it. Eddie sits back. He's ready to take on whatever route comes to him. Goff looks away, takes the check down, and the Bears get a nice little stop here on 1st and 5. Look, it's simplistic, right? It's not like this is a put him in canted. It's not a hang the banner play. It's more to say, when you watch the way that Eddie moves before the line of scrimmage, or moves before the play, in this case is shifting from, let's say, more of like a dead center 2 deep over to like right on top of the bunch. He's able to at least draw Goff's eyes and push Goff's eyes away from that out route, which you would hope that your guy would win against a safety with so many different ways that he could go here. But Goff takes one look at it, sees Eddie's out there, and says, you know what? I'm just going to check this thing down. Takes a second look. Ogletree's in the middle, throws the ball under pressure. Win for the Bears. It's interesting watching this, and yeah, exactly, Mike. I don't disagree there. Quinn has earned an offsides every once in a while. If he's jumping the snap like he is, and obviously he causes a fumble later in the game, which we'll get to because Quinn's a beast, but Quinn can jump off sides because it's a loss of 5 yards. It's really not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, and doesn't kill drives near like sacks do, because at the end of the day, they moved from the 30 to the 35. It's not that huge a win for the offense, but for the defense, if you time that snap right, you obviously could potentially kill a whole drive in one play. So 2nd down comes. Look, it's a simple little check down. Not every play is some massive revelation. But I did think this one was hilarious watching it live, because the Lions check this ball down. Johnson comes up. Peanut punches out a fumble, right? Then watch the football. I'm sure we all remember it, but the football just stops. I wish I had some kind of a zoom in feature here, but it just stops dead center as Trevis Gipson bends down and picks it up. And I was howling laughing at 11:20 on 11:20 on Thanksgiving Day, because I thought the Lions had just managed to Lions themselves as usual. I mean, Detroit's luck is nothing to giggle about if I wasn't a Bears fan. It's a lot to giggle about now, because that ball just sits there perfectly for the Bears to pick it up, and and it ends up not a fumble, but man, oh man, I thought that was hilarious. As soon as, because for those who don't know, Gibson recovers the bear, out of bounds, but right there, his foot is out as he picks this ball up. But man, it was so funny. And like you're talking about, Adamola, it's happened before. I mean, I'm shocked that ball didn't bounce out. The football hates the Lions this season. the results kind of show it. But I thought for a second there the Bears had gotten another lucky turnover right at the start of the game. They didn't, but nevertheless, it was pretty funny to see. So they move on. Let's see here. Yeah, the Justin Tucker thing is just absolutely bananas. But I had howled with laughter. Then here on, I think it's third down, the Lions run a really gorgeous pick on Roquan Smith with TJ Hawkinson setting it right here on a curl route that gets the running back wide open in the flat. Look, it's not perfect, right? Or it's not about not perfect. Sometimes the offense makes a play, really. I mean, this is something that I think while studying defense can be kind of hard to remember, is that sometimes the offense is going to make a play against good defense. Other times, good defense is going to make a play against good offense. We get both of those this game, as you would probably expect. But in this sense, Hawkinson sets a perfect pick on Roquan Smith, who the Lions just take a shot at and say, hey, he's probably got the running back on this play. So Goff kicks it out to, goodness gracious, let's see here. Yeah, Goff kicks it out to the running back, who's able to just make... Actually, I hadn't realized he makes a really nice little one-handed catch here. But he does. Pick route right there. Throw. Grabbed with one arm as Swift pulls it in. Picks up a pretty easy first down, all things told. Good offense. That's what the whole field is there for as a defense. So you get up, you get to the next play. And from here... That's a really nice completion. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. This one is rough from Burns' part. So it's not a great coverage set by Burns. But again, if you watch Eddie Jackson, for better or for worse, you can start to get a sense for the really, really wild roles that the Bears have for him in this defense. Because he starts the snap from this spot as a pressure piece that simulates pressure, and then immediately bails from the line of scrimmage, drops all the way off, robots back just in case Reynolds is running a curl route of some kind, and ends up kind of in no man's land based on the route that the Lions call. But you just watch the way that they try to use him compared to Gibson, who's almost all entirely just going backwards the overwhelming majority of the time. Jackson creeps up, ends up on the line of scrimmage, and then drops off from there. They're really trying to use him as a confusion piece, while Burns is out here just getting absolutely roasted on a quick out to the sidelines. And Goff makes a nice throw. It's nothing crazy difficult, right? But Burns gives up a ton of space there. So it's wild watching the way that Eddie Jackson gets used on this play. Obviously, it doesn't make a particularly positive impact, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it does. But watching the way he moves pre-snap is different than certainly Tease Tabor, but, to say the least. But a lot of the other players that the Bears have had in the secondary, he is an actual movable piece, a chess piece, if you will. Here he ends up on the line of scrimmage, and I don't want to say he helps keep Ogletree clean, but he does give the Bears that extra guy in the box advantage and goes from there. And that helps out when it comes to playing the run just a little bit. Mike, just for you, we will take a look at the face mask. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, this was a nasty game overall, but let's see. Oh, no, wrong play. Let's see here. Number 90. Oh, that's a big offensive face mask, hands to the face, whatever you want to call it. Oh, gosh. I'm actually pretty surprised that didn't end up getting seen. That's pretty gnarly. I mean, you watch a lot of these things, that's about as bad as it gets. I'll give you another view of it. So not just does he get that face mask, but he rips it off too. I mean, if it was an offensive player, it's an almost immediate call. But goodness gracious. Anyways, moving on. Again, you see him creep up from that too high spot. The Bears can bluff a whole bunch of things because Eddie's in the game. And yeah, Case, it is. I mean, it looked at least like a sack. But watching the way number 4 moved around pre-snap was extremely different or compared to what the Bears defense had looked like before this. So I don't want to say that's the reason Goff played poorly, because that's probably not true. I mean, the Goff and the Lions have not been a particularly productive offense, and I don't want to pretend that it's because of Eddie Jackson that he scored less, or that he threw for less than 200 yards and still had a really nice quarterback rating. But more want to just point out that there's a lot more disguise that the Bears can do. I don't know if you guys know this, but so Pro Football Focus has stats for how often how often a defense plays man and how often a defense plays zone, right? But they also have a stat for how often a team plays a defense that they can't recognize. They don't know whether it's zone or whether it's man. And Akusai, I'd have to go back and check because that's a much better stat. You're right. The Bears lead the league in percentage of those plays that PFF can't recognize, whether it's man or zone. And that's just one example of the way that Jackson and this defense has generally disguised coverage. But on about 29% of plays, PFF can't figure it out, which I think is, if nothing else, really interesting because it reflects the pattern match zones that they run a lot of the time, that it doesn't necessarily present as man, but it is technically a zone, and so on and so forth, things that can kind of blend together and get muddy. But more than anything, it's always interesting when your team is first in a category, especially one that's related to disguising. It made a lot of sense based on what we've been talking about this season. Exactly, Lester. Disguising coverages, as he says, is a Fangio staple, and Desai does that all the time, with Eddie Jackson being that guy that can be in the box and can be back in his too high coverage spot, or can be roaming around the middle of the field. Jackson's the one that moves, not Gibson. And I think that's part of the reason you saw the defense suffer so badly without number 4 on the field. And frankly, look, I can't tell you what is happening. I don't know what's going on in the room, but especially in the early part of the game, there are a couple points where I would have expected Jackson to get his nose dirty, and he doesn't. We can critique him for it, but part of me wonders whether Desai was like, dude, you got to stay on the field. I don't know. But it's wild seeing how different the defensive back end looks with Jackson on the field compared to what it looked like off the field, where Ben Roethlisberger and Jimmy Garoppolo were making the Bears get carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey. Somebody, by the way, because I don't want to ignore, who was it? Somebody further up mentioned something about the Bears probably getting destroyed by the Cardinals. Gregory Stevens, you're right. The Cardinals certainly should carve the Bears up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and I don't think even any Bears fan is going to be surprised when they do, especially if Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins come back. I mean, it's just such a massive talent advantage that I don't think anybody's going to end up shocked there. But anyways, let's keep moving. So on this next one, I think it's Quinn making a running play, darts right through the line of scrimmage. Sometimes you just beat the guy across from you. And Robert Quinn has really been that dude this season. If you took the jersey off, if he wasn't wearing 94 and was wearing 52, I don't think anybody would be surprised, right? Quinn has looked like the guy getting paid $30 million this season, as with 11 sacks, right? Quinn's currently chasing Richard Dent's single-season Bears record of 17.5. So that's Quinn. Goodness gracious. Quinn, for those who don't know, is at 11 with Dent at 17.5. And if memory serves, he's got 6 games to do it, right? So if in 6 games he gets 6.5 sacks, he ties the record. If he gets 7, he eclipses the record, and he's still got Minnesota left on the schedule, so who's to say? But 94 right here just smokes the lineman across from him. Massive run stop. One thing that I thought was really interesting, PFF also released an article just today talking about the detrimental effects of running the football sometimes, and the conclusion that they basically came to is a negative running play can set an offense back more so than a negative than an incompletion. And that's one of those plays that, look, I am no football guru. I am a guy who's constantly trying to formulate a smart opinion based on what I see in front of me. But it is becoming really interesting how, whether it's on the Bears offense or an opposing offense, when a running play works, great, you're on schedule. Nobody's surprised by that, right? 1st and 4 or 1st and 10, you get 4 yards. It's 2nd and 6. Maybe you're a yard behind the sticks analytically, but no big deal. But when you run the ball and you get 1 yard or 0 yards, or God forbid you lose any yardage, it seems like it does major damage. And on this play, the Bears on second and I think it was 6 stick the Lions. They end up on 3rd and 6, and they should have gotten a stop here. But this is where Burns gets absolutely toasted. I mean, roasted on that sideline as he gives up a wide open touchdown to Josh Johnson, who runs a really nice route, to be fair. No, it's not Josh Johnson, is it? Is it Josh Reynolds, the former Ram? I think it is, who was clearly the Lions' best receiver on this given day. It's interesting watching, by the way, from a defensive coverage perspective, what the Bears ran. They ran something fairly common, right? They come out it's a too high setup, but what they're going to do is they're going to run cover one robber. You've seen it on Madden. You've seen it all the time, right? But you're going to see Eddie Jackson basically creep along this inside line, trying to take away this zone I'm drawing for you right here. The Lions are going to run a deep post, and I think they make this look like a deep post and go out, but honestly, Burns get beat so cleanly, I'm not 100% certain what that route is, and all Eddie's trying to do is to disrupt the timing of this route, move on to this route, disrupt the timing again, and then creep for anything else coming over the middle. It's always interesting watching this kind of DB play because it's not talked about much, right? Where Jackson is reading the quarterback's eyes 100% of the way as he drifts and he gets in the way of what he's thinking might, keyword is might, be an over the middle. Because if it's deep, then Gibson and Christian have it. If it's in, though, that's his assignment. So he's got to take up that area of the field to keep the ball from becoming a problem there. So he gets in the way of this route, makes sure that 14 is covered up on his end, and then drifts a little bit further over, spots up Hawkinson, starts to go creep down towards making a play there. And at that point, the ball ends up released. It's over his head, and Burns is flatly beat. It's always interesting watching DB play because there's only so much one defensive back can do, but that's a coverage type that, especially coming out of cover or a too high setup, you're not necessarily expecting them to drop into that cover one defense. They always can, or that one high center field safety sort of defense, but what that second safety does can often be the difference in an interception or not. Goff, on the other hand, gets an easy one where he takes a look. He doesn't want to throw into this middle of the field right here. Checks the outside, finds his guy just wide open, and Reynolds makes a play. So Lions are up 7-0. I think Bears fans everywhere are moaning. Just, oh, you have got to be kidding me. But that's part of why the Bears end up ditching the whole cover one robber plan, because I think they were going to call this coverage a lot more often on third downs, but Burns gets so badly beat, they just start supporting him for the rest of the game, and I tend to doubt anybody here is going to be surprised by that. So we'll move on to the second drive of the game. Let's go over a whole bunch of defense stuff, because I think that there's really cool things to be talked about in this game. As far as just getting really good eyes on the defense, it's one of the only things the Bears are really going to be kind of keeping year to year, because offenses can make a big difference on personnel and how they play. But let's do this thing. And Sean, I'm curious about what reaction you're thinking of. But so the Bears back the Lions up off the punt. Crawford, thank you, Case. And so the Bears back the Lions up. They take a false start, and we start off with just a very basic run where it is. Oh, I came a little too far forward there. But so Lions take a false start and then immediately run the ball, because that's what you do on the 2-yard line, which this is a game situation I know I've always dwelt on a lot. I don't know what the obvious answer is when you don't trust your quarterback. Like, the last thing you want, right, is Jared Goff rolling out on some sort of play action rollout, ending up sacked in the end zone, and you give up 2 points and the ball, right? But of course maybe you want to run the ball, but it's one of the most predictive calls in football. So I don't know. In this case, Dan Campbell, biting the kneecaps off, decides he's going to trust his guys, run at the left side, which, to be fair, would be smart because you're targeting Bilal Nichols, who tends to struggle with more of these double teams. You're hoping probably that you can get a duo run on both guys right here, and they've got to resist a double team, which is more Blackson's game than it is Nichols. But so from there, you've got 55 over here is shading over a little bit, but honestly, Nichols does a pretty good job. Goldman does a really good job pushing over and getting to the running back as he gets that long arm out, affects the play, and brings it down. I always like watching defensive linemen. I know Case mentioned DBs. DBs are great, but watching defensive linemen duke it out in the trenches is really, really fun because Goldman's going to take a true double team, and he just beats the first guy clean. And by beats, I guess I mean, he makes sure 63 can't make an impact on his own push forward, gets his shoulder in on 78, and from there, he's got enough leverage to just drive backwards into the backfield. This is vintage Goldman, right? I mean, this is the Eddie Goldman that we used to see in 2018, even in 2019, blowing up run plays just like this, gets over, makes a nice play, forces, I think it's like 2nd and 12 at this point, where I got to point something out. When you talk about guys being a true difference maker, like, let's all just take a look at this play right here with 58 sealing the edge. Like, the Lions have what they want. He should be gone, right? Like, this running back should be gone into open space with a corner having no idea he's there. He's too far away to make an impact, and it's a one-on-one with Eddie Jackson to try and save a touchdown, and you've already given up the first down, right? Well, you would be if Roquan Smith wasn't on the field, who's ducked under a blocker and made a play that is honestly pretty unbelievable to watch. Like, I've been on a Roquan kick for about 2 weeks now. I would say that if you asked me 4 weeks ago, I didn't think Roquan was necessarily, quote-unquote, worth the money. But when you watch the way 58 is playing, which it sucks that he got hurt, check this out. The Lions get everything they want up on the line of scrimmage. You can watch all three of these guys, Goldman, Nichols, Blackson, they get beat off the snap. The Lions do a really good job of flowing over and getting all the blocks they want with 73 right there. So 73 comes over, and he should have 59 dead to rights, right? And then Daniel, it is an app called Screen Brush, it is on Mac. On Windows, it's Epic Pen. Both are free, which is nice. But so 73 should have Marsh blocked up. 58 has Roquan dead to rights. 38 is cutting underneath right here. This should be a very, very successful run play right through this hole, just like the Lions would want it. But make sure you're watching Roquan Smith. He ducks under the offensive tackle, who can't get a hand on him, also gets clear under 45 right there, and gets to the running back on the 1 yard line to stop him for a gain of 0, only because the running back falls forward. These exact kind of plays for a smaller linebacker on Roquan Smith are the difference, because generally speaking, you would expect a smaller linebacker to be a downright liability in the passing game, or not in the passing game, in the running game. Apologies, completely got the wrong side of the ball there. But so you'd expect Roquan Smith to be pretty easy to block, and through parts of his career he has been, but Roquan's able to keep his eyes on the running back with the offensive lineman in his purview, gets around the block altogether, and makes a play behind the line of scrimmage. That's the difference when it comes to some defenses. Like, Roquan Smith in this case was the difference, with Eddie Goldman coming up big on a 3rd and 11 stop where the Lions are just trying to get the ball out of the end zone. Goldman makes a really big play here. But it's wild to see how much difference one linebacker can make, because Ogletree's not making that play. Goldman here just completely controls his guy, gets him to one side with the big old left arm coming over, dragging the running back down. It's cool watching individual plays like that, but that second down set up 3rd down. Like, it was in that case really nice. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, to say the defense deserved a safety is weird, because I'm with you that the defense played really well, but saying deserves a safety is awfully funny, right? Just because safeties are so hard to get. Talking about Travis Gibson, Oren, I feel like, let's see, do I trust Travis Gibson to be the starter? That's a good question. I mean, Travis Gibson at this stage in his career is young. He's raw. I think in a rotational perspective, he would have a really, really, really good season. I mean, especially because if you could bring him off the bench fresh, that'd be great. I think in a season or two, he could be a low to mid-level starter. Remember, guys like Mac, guys like Trey Flowers, we're talking about an edge position that is loaded with people. Like, Trey Flowers would be considered a middle-tier edge rusher, and he had a, 12-sack season in New England, which I get it. That's not pressures. That's not a lot of the advanced stuff that we really care about when it comes to edge rushers, but it's more to say that Trey Flowers is a very talented player, and he might be middle level. Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, both in Green Bay, are solid. One has been great and the other has been meh at different points throughout their time in Green Bay. Preston Smith right now seems to be enjoying a bit of a resurgence. But as far as Gibson, basically I think the way that I would say it, Oren, is you don't need to put the cart before the horse. Like, it's not trade Mac because we have Gibson, but as a fourth rounder goes, this is the ideal for an edge rusher. Fifth rounder, actually. Maybe did they trade up in the fourth round? It's escaping me right now. But Gibson overall has been awesome since the preseason. He has looked like a totally different defender than he did last year. But thank you, JJ. A fifth rounder. So it's a fourth rounder to get him in the fifth. Massively productive for a fifth round pick. That's everything that you want out of him. Rotational, spot starting defensive end. So you're happy with what you've got in Gibson, but whether you're trading Mac or Quinn isn't because of Gibson. I think you would be doing that because of the Bears' future more than anything else, depending on what you could get for them, and knowing that you do have Gibson there to play edge 2 in a pinch with potential, potentially a free agent, which it's always hard to get cheap edge free agents, but you could get, whether it's an Adecho or somebody like him, to come in, play edge 2/3 on rotation, and then have Gibson as part of that room. Either way, you would hope he's a Bear for a good little while. Hopefully that answered your question, because we just kind of talked about a bunch of stuff. But so, moving on to the third Bears drive. Let's get there. This is where you start to see the Bears protect Burns a little bit, which can't be too surprising based on the way that things were. By the way, I've really started to feel for kick returners, because you just end up with guys who are 5 yards deep in the end zone, and if they kneeled it, they'd be on the 25, and they always seem to take it out. Like, coaches give them that one job. That's their one way to shine and potentially earn a bigger role in an offense. And it's just so inefficient. Like, if you had a robot out there that just took the touchback, most of the time you'd have better field position. Getting to the 25 is tough in the NFL, especially when you take kicks 5 yards deep, but that's a different discussion, because that feels more like the NFL trying to get rid of the kickoff. But so, let's see. Next on this one, check out the way that Ejax goes from right here about, I wouldn't say in the box, but just on the edge of that run box back towards shading Burns in this case, where the Bears suddenly started to do a lot more protection, right? Let's see. Oh, WY. That's great to know. Specifically, what are you thinking about? The Gibson conversation? Roquan? You get the idea. But watching this game, it became apparent that they wanted to make sure that Burns on an island did not end up like he did again, right? Where, just watching this play, take a look at, again, that pre-snap motion that it seems like only Jackson's capable of in this Bears defense, as he shifts from that edge of the box out very late in the snap to clearly protect Burns, just to be absolutely certain. Because as you guys probably saw, Burns, after getting cooked on that opening drive, settled down a little bit, right? But so we can, whether that's all Jackson, whether it's just Burns settling down a little bit more legitimately, you get the idea. Or, that's your call to make, but you could see that Sean Desai wanted to make sure that 25 was fairly well protected, even though they moved Jackson around all the time. Even within that, they didn't want Jackson to be an obvious usage one way or another. Now, going back to that play where Jackson's covering for Burns, it's important to note that the Lions set up a really nice two-man game with, I think it's Travis Gibson dropping off and Jalen Johnson right here, and they get what they want too, because the Lions kick it out for a check down. Both guys come up to rally tackle, but the running back does a really nice job generating 9 yards. The Bears are definitely playing bend, don't break defense. They really don't care about giving up say 9 yards. Anything under 10, they're fine with, because they want to make your offense make a play. Like, make 2 plays in a row, make 3 plays in a row. The Bears offense will capitalize off of the fact that whether it's that you inevitably run the ball and don't get a ton. I love the fact that in this case, they've got Eddie Jackson in the box, but for example, this was one of those plays where I thought his nose could have gotten a little dirtier. As you see the running back cut back towards his lane, and the instant he does, he sort of, I don't want to say he shies away from it, but he definitely takes his first step backwards instead of towards the running back. You don't need to bang the "Ejack sucks" table, but this was one where he looked like a guy, let's say, coming off of a hamstring injury playing defensive back. But they give up, I'd say, about 4 yards overall. Like, not a ton still. They're going to work their way down the field. And then, because of the way that this defense works, you end up getting plays where Artie Burns, as bad as he was in coverage, especially a couple times, he made a couple really nice plays downhill, which I'm sure you guys have heard about Duke Shelley before, right? Seems like it's a Desai thing that he can coach a lot of, let's say, run game instincts and downhill attitude inside his defensive backs, because they have got to tackle to be on the field, in this defense. You've got a 6-man box that gives up a lot of room on this run, but it's 25 that gets by Josh Reynolds and makes a play in the run game to stop them to a gain of about 1. This defense in particular, as anything that plays out of a too high shell, it is imperative that your DBs tackle properly, that they come downhill and make plays in the running game. It's not the kind of defense to let your linebackers do all the work, and credit to Burns, he did that well. Right, Derek? Anybody can tackle. But so then you get a nice little play by you get a really nice play by Detroit. They have TJ Hawkinson make a play on Eddie Jackson and Roquan Smith. I can't tell whose fault this is. Part of me thinks that it might just be they make a really nice play, because it seems like Eddie Jackson is bracketing. He did a lot of bracketing TJ Hawkinson, but it looks like here he's trying to cover the seam and the out, leaving the in and the stop to Roquan. But Hawkinson just bullies Quan, gets on out there, and makes a nice catch at the sticks. So nice play by them. Hawkinson goes toe-to-toe with the Bears' best and comes out on top. Hawkinson's developing into a really solid player, and I doubt you needed me to tell you that, because of his first-round pedigree and some of the plays that he made against the Bears, including a touchdown that we'll talk through later. But it definitely seemed on that play like the offense just makes a play sometimes. But so from here, I love the way that this defense is structured, just in the sense that they'll take the occasional cut. They'll make you beat them with death by 1,000 cuts, because in this case, Tonga takes on 2 guys, and whether he kind of loses or not is yours to say, but he's able to stop the run for a gain of only about 4, and that helps the Bears start to generate a stop. And so from there, you get Ejax shading Burns as he runs over. He's got that side of coverage just a little bit as he protects his guy. They're able to make a couple nice little plays. This might have been, by the way, ironically enough, like the Lions had some really nice drives, but here they put together a whole lot of things until they started taking penalties. But that was sort of the Lions, I feel like, MO throughout this whole game, right? Their drives start getting shorter and shorter, unfortunately, for them. But on that play, you get a whole bunch of different things that go on. Eddie Jackson in there gets his nose in the run game a little bit more so. You see it pretty well on the tight angle, but he punches on through, denies that middle lane along with the rest of the flowing defense as Burns makes another tackle in the run game. And then we get a false start. Yeah, no kidding, Akusai. Nagy and Campbell really were just going at it in terms of the, what is it? in terms of like worst coach award, they were battling. Here, I think it's on this side. I mean, it's always honestly hard to tell just a little bit. Thank you, Ace. High octane football is what we do when we're talking Bears and Lions, but you get a nice little flinch. There it is. I think honestly, sometimes I feel like false starts are pretty brutal calls, but the defenses are watching for it, and they'll put you out there. So talking through the cornerback from Oregon, I think you talk about Thomas Graham, right, Jay Sanders? I don't know. I don't think he's struggling that bad. I mean, that's just my guess. My guess would be that he's a rookie and he doesn't really know what's going on, right? I think that cornerback, especially in the NFL, is a really tough position to learn because if you end up, just to give an example, right? If you end up on a stop and go route biting too hard, you give up a touchdown. If you end up, this is maybe even more important, thinking that you've got a flat assignment when you've got to carry a vertical, you gave up a touchdown. Like there is a lot of no mistakes kind of football that you have to that you have to be prepared for. You have to be ready to not blow coverages. You have to be as assignment sound as possible. And even the pro guys, the guys that end up on the field, make mistakes all the time. All the time. We cover them on this channel pretty often. I mean, blown coverages aren't that uncommon, all things told. But until the defensive coordinator trusts you to not blow them, you're not hitting the field. So Graham's preseason definitely wasn't kind to him. There's a reason that not only was he cut, made it all the way through waivers, but ended up back on the practice squad. So I get it. I mean, Duke Shelley isn't playing well. Vildor isn't playing well. The Bears do not have a whole bunch of corners, like some massive stable of corners that are so good that you feel better about putting Graham in. But that said, it doesn't surprise me that as a rookie, he's struggling to get on the field out of the 6th round. That's not uncommon. But yeah, WY, I feel kind of the same way. I feel like Pace personally sold Kindle Vildor out. I think Vildor profiles decently as an inside corner, like a slot corner right here, what number 21's basically doing. But as an outside corner, he's just getting destroyed. I mean, there's a reason that Artie Burns is in the game. They benched him for accountability. But yeah, I feel like the fact that Vildor came into the season as the declared CB2 once, or he didn't because there was that free agent whose name totally escapes me. Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm really struggling to remember. But either, or like, whatever it was. Oh, it was Desmond Trufant. There we go. No, it wasn't Robeson. Trufant was the supposed CB2, and then he ends up cut for Vildor, who has nobody behind him. Nobody at all. And so we'll see. And Jalen Johnson did get more play. He was a 2nd-round pick, so it happens, right? The 2nd-round picks are going to get a lot more time, or a lot more play time than the 6th-round picks are, to say the least. And JC, I don't know. He seems like one of those guys that would have to make his way onto the field. So Ogletree makes a really nice play here, ends up getting a holding call drawn against him for 93. And yeah, Case, there was some stuff going on with Trufant that I feel like is completely outside of the play on the field. But so 93 gets held. I can't ever tell whether a hold is enough when it's not especially bad, but you take them when they come, right? The Lions have another false start, which, believe it or not, and Motown, I see you as a Lion inside of the or in the chat. First of all, welcome. Hope you have a great time. Second of all, what do you think of Dan Campbell? Because I love the attitude that he brings, but there was two moments throughout this game where the Lions took 3 back-to-back penalties. One was this one, false start, holding, false start. The next one was false start, holding, which definitely didn't help because the Lions had a lot of momentum on this drive. Sure, I like a lot of the things that the Bears were doing schematically because when you make a team make a bunch of plays against you, you end up with drives eventually where a guy or somebody makes the other mistake. We didn't mention Dalton's 300 yards explicitly, but it's definitely a goofy statistic the way things worked out because I feel like Dalton, sure, he had 300 yards. Sure, not everything went his way. He could have thrown 3 picks. I mean, if the Lions had come down with the gifts that I think Dalton was giving them, it probably wouldn't have worked out in the Bears' favor, all things told. But hey, I mean, you take what you're given, and Dalton got away with only 1 interception. And honestly, he got away with the one that was least his fault, but we'll get there when we get there. There's Quinn making just another wild play. Like, take a look at this. Nuts, in my opinion. Just watching him. Oh, no. Just kidding. I fawned over something rough. So you remember how we've talked about how sometimes offense just makes a good play? They have the right play call against the right defense or something like that. In this case, it's a deep, like the, what is it? Yeah. Lions are on third down at this point, and so they're going to run a basic running play, like a draw to try to get some yardage out. And the Bears on third down are thinking, we are going to run a stunt. And they just end up lucking into a perfect defense for what they're running against, because by the time 91 Goldman bites right on down and Quinn rolls over, he ends up with a free run at the back, brings him down for an easy third down stop. Gabe, thanks so much for jumping on in. I'm so glad that you're having fun. That's what matters to me, is making Bears football more interesting, helping you learn about what's going on. Can't wait. But let's see. Oren, I think the complex part about the NFL is the salary cap. And Romeo, I haven't analyzed the Cardinals OL specifically. I know Murray's not 100%, but the Bears are really struggling as a team right now to stay healthy. But getting back to it, I feel like the salary cap argument for the running back is just a tough one, because as much as we would call Pace a great drafter for finding a Khalil Herbert in the 6th round, there's always a Khalil Herbert in the 6th round. There was a Jordan Howard in the 5th. There was a Tariq Cohen in the 4th. There was a David Montgomery in the 3rd. There was a Khalil Herbert in the 6th. Maybe you say that it's Pace's scouting, that they're hitting on running backs at a crazy degree, but I kind of end up looking back and thinking there's always a Raheem Mostert that's undrafted. There's a Phillip Lindsay that's undrafted. There's a Zach Stacy that's taken in the 7th round. It doesn't mean, when people say running backs don't need huge contracts, it's not hating on running backs. It's not anybody saying that running backs are bad. It's more saying that there are a lot of really good running backs. Exactly, Jay Sanders. It's that running backs are deep. There's a lot of them. So do you need David Montgomery specifically, or could you roll with Khalil Herbert and probably get decent things? Oh, yeah, good point, Sebastian. Zach Stacy was a terrible example, wasn't he? Especially given what we saw recently on Twitter. So I apologize for that. That, heinous video that got posted the other day, right up there with another Ravens running back that we don't need to mention by name. But you definitely take a look at, to use Gregory, you mentioned Pete Carroll. When you draft a running back high, you end up in position where you've got Chris Carson on the team who's playing really well. This is talking about the Seahawks. And you spent a first-round pick on Rashad Penny, and he never ends up being your starter. I mean, spending money or spending picks on running backs can just bite you, because you end up with other players that blossom, and suddenly there's a positional logjam that is not good for anybody, right? Somebody mentioned, I can't believe that you wouldn't play both Monty and Herbert. I hear you. You're right. But I also know that you don't need Monty per se. I love Montgomery. I think he's the best check down running back in the NFL, or at least one of them. The way that he makes guys miss in open space is flat out special. But there's no doubt in my mind that if you gave Herbert a more starting role per se, he could handle it too. And if Cohen ever comes back, which, gracious alive, you hope so, right? I hope his career's not over. You would think that you could get juice out of both Monty and Herbert. The question becomes, how much then would you pay Montgomery? Are we talking $3.5 million? Are we talking $6.5 million? Or is Monty's agent coming to the table saying, I want $10 million a year and I won't take any less, thinking you'll come down to $8.5? Because when you talk $8.5 million more than your wide receiver 2 ever got paid, it becomes a tough bargain, right? Montgomery probably wants to be paid with a feature, or like a feature back. I don't even think that that's problematic. The question becomes, would you pay him like a feature back and then use him like a feature back? Or do you say, man, I wish the best for you. I hope you get paid by somebody. We're going to draft another guy in the 5th and probably get some mileage out of him and Herbert. It's your call. There's always a Damian Williams out there, but I thought that was an interesting one. Thanks for bringing it up. Let's get back to defense. But Jay Sanders, they did pay Cohen, but to give Cohen some credit, Cohen was a phenomenal receiving back, which is all the rage in today's NFL. But so, yeah, no, I completely agree, BG Bears fan. Like, that's the sort of thing where when you look at the Bears and the yardage that they're getting checking down to running backs, it's not very good. But so I feel the same way, Derek, that whether it's the Ravens or the Seahawks, that if you're Monty's agent, you probably see some like outside football, or what is it, outside of football money? Are you thinking like outside money that's somewhere else? This was a really nice touch. You know what? We could talk about these two. The Bears offense was not phenomenal all day, but on this drive, oh my gosh, they absolutely were, right? Where you end up with a really poor play by this safety where you're going to get Darnell Mooney running a deep post and getting so wide open it hurts. Like, it's a clean pocket of Kusai. It's a great route. Mooney just toasts his guy on what looks like it kind of feints like it's going to be scissors, and then this guy curls, which the only reason that matters is because this corner is thinking, okay, I'll pass him off, and then gets caught totally on his own, not passing him off, just beat. So the fake scissors really works to make sure that 24 doesn't curl back and cover him, but this safety does nothing to help. Like, if we go back and we take a look, we joked about Artie Burns getting burned. Like, he gets toasted. Dalton throws a gorgeous football that basically hits Mooney in stride. This is just a beautiful play top to bottom. I'll give you the end zone view, then we'll take another wide view right here. Like, so Dalton drops back. He sees it's open. Ball is beautiful. And 31 ends up making a tackle. But seriously, take a look at this. Like, this, when we talk about DB play and when you talk about Eddie Jackson, remember that this is what the NFL looks like. You can make a bunch of jokes about, like, it's the Lions. But in the NFL, there are the Trevis Gibsons. There are the number 31s here for the Lions. Like, this is a really, really poor play. Like, as a center field safety, you want to talk about the number one thing you can't let happen. It's pretty much this. Lions get completely caught unawares. Mooney picks up a huge gash of a play, and the Bears are suddenly moving. They score a touchdown on the next one. Also, we can take a look here. You can see that the Bears really like to help out Larry Borum. I think it's the rookie thing, because on a lot of his pure pass sets, he ends up pretty solid. Dang it, did I really do it again, Akusai? But so Borum does a solid job. Peters gets beat, but Whitehair helps him out. You always like to see camaraderie with the offensive line. At least I think it's fun, right? Where Whitehair comes back, he helps out Sam Mustipher, and then he rolls over. He helps out his friend Jason, even has to go to the ground for it. But hey, the pocket's good enough. They set up the play. Dalton makes the throw. You got the ball in the 16. So good enough. A dirty pot, or like a clean pocket is a clean pocket, no matter how many offensive linemen end up with positive style points. And then they just run four verts. I mean, it's not, there is an element of you wonder where these calls are with Justin Fields, but where I feel like the Bears normally run a whole bunch of deep curls that we make fun of on this channel. They run a really nice four vert set here that just gets a whole bunch of guys in the different files of the offense, or like of football, where I think it was Doug Maddox that described at some point, that described the football field as a whole bunch of different areas of space that kind of look like this. You've got about 5 yards out. This area is like one. There's another one over here. There's a book on it. I could show you guys at some point. But deep down the field, you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vials of space that the opposing team has to defend, and massive. Maybe it will, Peyton, but the Bears get Jimmy Graham wide open. Credit to Dalton, he totally sees it with. Oh my gosh, I can't screw this up. It's Azzaloni, 34, Saints guy, right? But he ends up with Jimmy Graham wide open. Really nice throw, really nice read. Yeah, exactly, Romeo. It's Anzalone. Because, there's the other way to pronounce it that everybody on the internet immediately goes for. But so, Jimmy Graham, wide open. Bears offense suddenly looked really good for those two plays in particular as we get back to the defense. Oh, man. There's a good one coming up here. So, next up, Lions take it out of the end zone. Nothing specific. Let's see. No, Casey does not, to say the least. Honestly, I actually thought that Anzalone has played pretty well. Like in this game in particular, I think he was one of the only people that really like shone for the Lions defense personally, and the CB number 24, who we will get to, because his, if you're a Lions fan in here, that pick he had on Dalton in the end zone was outstanding. But let's get back to the Bears defense. So this is pretty standard too high coverage, and it is gorgeous. You take a look at what the Bears are able to do here. Eddie kind of shifts forward a little bit, backs off immediately, and you have just got a whole bunch of routes that are absolutely swallowed. A check down is wide open, but that's really pretty much it, as he's covered, he's covered, he's covered. What is it? I think it's Gibson is coming back for 14 just to be sure. Jackson's over the top in case Hawk gets away, and there's really nowhere to go for Goff. So he checks down to his running back, who gets a nice little 7-yard gain. Don't get me wrong, it's a solid play result for the Lions, but it's really good coverage for the Bears too. And credit to the Lions, they keep trying to throw a bunch of vertical stuff at the Bears. They just didn't get much of it. They got that early play, they get a couple later down, but then they get back to running the ball, and I feel like it's always funny watching them run the ball because they get 7 yards, but they ended up with 14 points for a reason. Sometimes I feel like they run themselves into making a mistake, right? And no kidding, Derek. I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. That, oh my gosh, now I gotta remember his name. That the Packer that was the same way. Long blonde hair, gorgeous locks, if you would. He would have been a great Lion from the Maine perspective. But I think I blocked his name out of my memory because I just didn't want to hear about it anymore. Yeah, Goldilocks, exactly. So from here, they get an 8-yard run, which again, it's Clay Matthews. You're right, Sebastian. Man, I knew I hated that name. I can't tell if you guys saw my expression fall, but it did. The funny part about watching these runs really is the fact that the Bears will offer a 6 to 7 man box, and then when Eddie drops out of it, they pick up 8 yards, and it's a good gain. It's a first down. The Lions get what they want, but the Bears are just waiting around for the Lions to make a mistake, and this play kind of forces it, because the Bears are able to turn a pretty good opportunity into only 4 yards, which leaves them like 1 behind the chains. The Lions were generally on schedule all day long, and this is a decent example of it. They had a really physical approach to the game, but Goldman and Nichols are able to make the play, turn it into a stop. And here comes the fun part. We all knew, or I wouldn't say we all knew it was coming, like I knew it was coming, but like if you watched the game, this was definitely one that'll jump off at you. Both OTs get their socks blown off. Like maybe there's an element, kind of like somebody was saying, of Quinn being a little closer than maybe he should be. You take a look at this. That is awfully close to a neutral zone infraction compared to, say, where Goldman is lined up about a yard off the ball. But I am not a rules expert, and I'm not about to pretend that I know 100% of the time, but Quinn annihilates 68, works right inside, and in the middle of a hold, eats Jared Goff alive, and Gibson rolls out and forces the fumble. I mean, this is the wild part, in my opinion, about Quinn's season, is at 32 years old, he looks lightning fast, just as fast as he used to, and I feel like Gibson gets a really solid Gibson gets a really solid play right here too. Oh, goodness gracious, Sean. Are you really going there? Or Shane. But so, hey, Peyton, you know what? If lining up with the neutral zone gets you sacks and fumbles like this, I guess it's worth it because it's 5 yards occasionally. But man, he gets a huge advantage, whether it's an advantage or a sack. Gibson does a really solid job on the other end. Somebody was asking about him earlier. This is a really, really solid rush by him too, as he gets his shoulder underneath and just power drives this way, works his way back up after the field to force the fumble, which I definitely didn't see real time. I thought it was just a standard sack, right? Nice effort by Quinn, but he works his way back up. This is one of those like, hot dang, that's a really nice football play kinds of moments, because Quinn takes just long enough to bring Goff down that Gibson leaps up, punches the ball out of Goff's hands, forces it on the ground. Like, that's not a coaching thing, you know? But hey, it works out. So moving on to the next drive, because the Bears get 3 out of this one. Actually, no, they might not. Let me see. We're at 28-40. This is the interception. So we'll first talk about this one. We might as well just go back up, or like back and forth a couple times. Bears run a variation of smash where they're going to get the curl out of Montgomery right here, and then they're just going to have Cole Kmet go over the top. And Dalton places the ball really well. They'd been scouting the way that that the Lions had been treating this, and Dalton just sees something he likes, lets the ball go, floats it into a really nice little pocket. Smash is a very basic call against a too high safety. You can tell why. I mean, the safety has a long way to go if he wants to break on this route. And if he gets there, the ball is going to float right into Kmet's hands with the safety behind him. So it'd have to be a poor throw if the safety is going to make a play on it. It's all up to this corner. And once he hesitates even just a little bit, Dalton makes the decision, yeah, I'm throwing. Like right here, that little hesitation is all he needed to say, we're throwing this ball. So he puts it over the top. Nice throw by Dalton. Warren, Cole Kmet is unfortunately a very good question. Like, is he good? Is he not good? I think the honest answer is tight ends in general that have receiving ability are hard to find. And so while I don't think Cole Kmet is classically great, I also think that he's certainly useful. And so whether he's the next Jimmy Graham, let's not let's not make things too hard on ourselves, right? I think that there are a lot of people that want to overrate him one way or another, but Kmet makes some good blocks sometimes, can mess up assignments here and there, makes really nice contested catches sometimes. He ran one of the best stick routes I've ever seen him run in this game. We'll probably get to it later, but there are a lot of people that want to hail him as the next Zach Ertz, the next Travis Kelce. We're going to need to see some pretty epic developmental steps if we want to get there, but we don't have to hurry ourselves too much because, like Derek's saying, Cole Kmet is young. So if this is who he is for the rest of his career, I mean, he's about to struggle his way to 500 yards. So we don't need to act like he's an unproductive player, even though, like we're talking about, I mean, yards aren't the greatest metric for how good a player is per se. But what I'm more thinking when it comes to Kmet, who's not on the field in this case, is when you inevitably set up, oh no, there he is. When you set up an offense that has a dynamic receiver there, and hopefully a receiver that holds water there, then you could send Mooney on a pattern that looks like that with, let's say, the second receiver running more of an in-out action, a deep curl over there if you wanted to, with Cole Kmet just sort of drifting into whatever zone would be occupied or would be left vacant by these two receivers. It doesn't take incredible talent to be a heady tight end like Jason Witten was, so it remains to be seen whether Cole Kmet can start to develop that understanding and feel against zone coverage that'll help him get open and be a positive contributor in pretty much any circumstance. Is he a super athlete? We can pump the brakes. Last time we saw one of those, whether you consider it David Njoku or O.J. Howard, they didn't work out. There's more to being tight end than just being a super athlete. But with Cole, it's always going to come down to how good is the offense around him and how well can he start to feel all those variables we just talked about. And AKS, you're not wrong for thinking that drop he had against Tampa Bay was crippling. And I don't remember a whole lot of the penalties that he's taken. It's not like I've normally pointed the finger at Kmet, but he's had a couple moments throughout this season in particular, whether it's a drop or whether it's a real drop or the ball getting thrown at him, like that the play that we had against oh man, it completely escapes me which game it was, but there's one I know everybody said, Kmet, you gotta catch that. Like, he had one against the Lions, he had a touchdown at one point that came back. False starts wouldn't surprise me, AKS, but you get the idea. I feel like Kmet is somebody who's under a whole lot of fire for being fine. Like, Kyle Rudolph, I think, is a great example. You get the idea. But this play was interesting, if for no other reason than Dalton sees that he's got Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin is a hilarious example of a perfectly all right receiver. And this route is a great example of that. Dalton misses him. It happens, right? Kmet to the moon, Jordan. I hear you. I think being excited about Cole Kmet is not a problem, especially because tight end is complex. I mean, there's a reason that I'll point out a couple guys, right? There's a reason that Heath Miller and Jason Witten, it's not just because the old guard game looked different, that a lot of these bigger, slower guys were perfectly good tight ends. I mean, Cole Kmet has a lot of room to grow in a position that you do a lot of things in. It's rare to find the George Kittles, sure, but if you stop looking at what we would consider the unicorns and start looking for more guys like Mark Andrews, you end up with somebody that Kmet could at least aspire to at this point. There's a lot of route running technical ability he'd need to learn, and frankly, physical strength he would need to add to his frame before he can rival Mark Andrews, but Kmet's not going to turn into a 6'7" Darren Waller overnight. He could, on the other hand, be a perfectly useful Kyle Rudolph-esque tight end. That's who sticks with me. But again, I want to just point out, get back on track, this route, because I think that's really, I really think this one's funny. As you watch Marquise's footwork, he doesn't do anything particularly fast. He doesn't do anything particularly intense to get around this corner. Just a basic, like, stall route with a little bit of go action. Watching the Bears receivers is, well, it definitely makes you realize the amount of room that they have to go up, right? Because I think Mooney at this point stands out amongst Marquise Goodwin, Tamir Byrd, just like you'd want him to, right? I mean, 5th-round pick or not, Darnell Mooney looks like the clear-cut NFL receiver in the Bears' current setup. And frankly, Cole Kmet looks better than Goodwin or Byrd. It's just a question in your part, or it's a question you'll have to answer for yourself, whether Kmet looking better than Goodwin or Byrd as a receiver is an accomplishment or not. This one, I think the ball gets away from Dalton. He had a couple balls that I think he was a little late on, this being one of them. It's a quick out route that the ball ends up too far, and I don't want to say he's lucky it doesn't get picked, because I hate when people do that, but it's an incompletion that you're happy didn't bounce into somebody else's hands, right? Because when you watch this play, there were a couple of these with Dalton, like this, you can't leave it out, and up, and more importantly, I'm surprised Dalton takes this and makes it what looks like a 3-step drop, because he takes that extra step back. And I wish he'd have had the ball out right now. Safety creeps up right there. But he lets the ball go a little later than you want, ends up pushing it to 3rd down. And then the Bears call a decent play, kind of get what they want. And you're going to see a really phenomenal play by the cornerback that I can't talk up enough, because it would be easy for me as a Bears fan right now, just to look everybody in the camera and talk real, right? It would be easy for me as a Bears fan to tell you, oh, Dalton sucks. Fields is good. Dalton's 300 yards were a sham. This interception, this is who Dalton is. That's not the point here. The Bears are going to call a really nice, if basic, red zone combo where you're going to have Darnell Mooney run a post route right there and then a quick out and up at that stage that should, at the very least, get this safety, who we've seen struggle, pick one. If he attacks down on Darnell Mooney, then you throw the in right there. Like you go to Tamir Byrd. If he sits and sees Tamir Byrd coming, obviously you throw the post because Mooney's going to beat his guy. So when you see the safety clearly commit right here, quick post, safety's committed, this should be open. Dalton's already thrown it. He's not asking any questions, right? Because Bird's going to come right through. He's going to end up getting intercepted, right? So is this Dalton's fault? I don't actually think so. I think it's Bird's fault. If you wanted to pin blame on anybody, it's Bird. Because Bird doesn't sell his route in the slightest, not even a little bit. And the corner makes a beautiful play. Like, you take a look at what the corner sees. 24 at this stage takes a look inside, recognizes Mooney's running across the middle, and holy moly, he sees and immediately thinks, just instinctively, I'm going to have to undercut this because I know what he's going to do. And so as soon as Bird makes his cut, you see 24 drive on the ball because he knows the throw's coming. He saw Mooney's pattern, adapted his zone to it, and recognized that if I just fade backwards, I'm not getting anything. I'm going to undercut this, and if I get beat, I get beat. But a nice play of instincts and athleticism turns into a gorgeous interception at what feels like the last second. If you were a Lions fan, this was pretty. Like, this was a really nice play that I feel like, if anything, shows the value of how good receivers make a big difference. Because, like you're talking about Draco, immediately you're going to think, oh, that's a crappy throw by Dalton. Like, you want to do better than that. But watch Bird's route. Bird does nothing. Bird does nothing on this play. Like, he Dalton is a one read guy to everybody who's saying, like, you could take a look at Komet. I mean, you can, right? But that's where the power of freeze frame comes on in. Dalton's going to take a look at the safety, and as soon as he sees safety bite down, he's thinking, oh, I'll throw to my other guy because that's what I wanted to do in the first place. He's a 10-year veteran. He's used to stuff like this, right? But so Bird, if you watched him, doesn't throw any fake. He just he runs. I drew it too sharp, honestly. Like, he runs the most rounded route that looks kind of just like that. And Oruwariye makes a beautiful play at this point. AKS, I can't tell. I'm sure there's a little bit of it that's on coaching and details. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a little bit of it that's on route running. But Dalton throws to where Bird is. I just wish Bird, whether it's a shoulder shake, even a head fake, had done anything to throw Oyuare's sent off. He doesn't. And instead, you end up with an interception that I don't think a better receiver lets happen. Like, if this is Allen Robinson, call me crazy, I don't think Oyuare is trying to undercut Allen Robinson. Maybe it's just me. I get you, Jordan, like, on hating the concept, and I think there probably are better ways to undercut it. Feel free to. But just evaluating the players on the field and what happened, they got the space they wanted. Maybe they got it in kind of a gimmicky way, but man, the corner makes a really nice play on it, because I keep looking at to use the power of freeze frame in my favor at one point. I keep looking at the amount of space that they did get right here and thinking it's not a terrible concept if you get this kind of space, but like Sebastian's saying, I mean, I think you could sell a better route at that point. In case, I hear you. I think if Mooney and the quarterback have better, let's call it camaraderie, you could make an adjustment, potentially put the ball right here, because you don't need the touchdown. Like, you can get a first down. But to your point, Sean, maybe it was just a poor decision, and that you could put you could absolutely put the issue on Dalton for throwing into a bracketed coverage. An interception still has to fall on the quarterback eventually, right? But either way, I just like the discussion. I tend to doubt that surprises anybody. But so, like, right? A high point to Bird, Jordan, a go route to Goodwin down the sidelines that doesn't get converted. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't think anybody out here is saying that the Bears offense looks particularly good right now, right? Whether it's Dalton in or whether it's Fields. It's pretty much a mess with Fields at this point, and with Dalton, it looks like same old Bears dead last offense, you know? Like, at least that's my 2 cents. If you wanted a high level take, is Dalton produced 300 yards and 16 points with a missed field goal in there at 53 yards. So long field goal, let's call it 17.5 points, right? Nothing special against a defense that is struggling more than just about any defense in the NFL. Yes, you're missing Allen Robinson. Yes, you're missing Justin Fields. But outside of that, you've got Andy Dalton, the original starter, right? The free agency picked starter that was going to be leading Kellen Mond or Davis Mills before Justin Fields fell into the Bears' lap. The guy who was going to be your QB1 against, like Jordan's saying, the third, fourth, and fifth corner. And the Bears, they put up nothing, like, all things told. I mean, it's the sort of thing where Akusai, even before we get into Dalton versus Fields, I'll be honest, this is just not a win for the Bears offense. Like, I think we could just cut bait there and say this wasn't a good game for the Bears offense, 300 yards and all, right? And I'm with you, WY. It's not as much about Dalton. Like, that's the key, right? It's not about saying, oh, Andy Dalton sucks. Everybody wants to make this a Dalton Fields comparison. I really just kind of want to keep bringing it back to the offense isn't working with Dalton. It's not working with Fields. It's not working for different reasons with each. It's not productive. It's dead last in total offense. And they had the opportunity for a get-right game here, and it didn't go well. Like, the offense manages to make everything that they do look difficult, no matter what it is. And like you're saying, Jordan, outside of a phenomenal last drive, 18 plays, eight and a half yards killed, and like 82 yards, the Bears offense looked like they were two really good plays that led to 7, and some field goals, the occasional moment of productivity, and then they'd shoot themselves in the foot. And exactly, Akusai. It really is more that it doesn't work regardless of the quarterback. Whether it was to Derek's point, because Derek, I legitimately love the fact, Derek Reeves in the chat, that you bring up Trubisky here and there, because I do think that there's something to be said for the offense. To me, legitimately felt like it looked better with like the offensive scheme with Trubisky in it. But since Trubisky left, I mean, Trubisky, Foles, Trubisky, Foles, Daniel, Dalton, Fields. That's a lot of quarterbacks, and it's getting more dysfunctional as it goes. The Nick Foles-led 28-20 offense, starting from Indianapolis through Tennessee, was one of the worst Bears offenses I've seen, and that includes the John Fox era, probably since Trestman, all things told. But even the Trestman offenses, memory serves, they weren't that bad. It was the defense that was letting them down. Like, I as a Bears fan, I really have to try to be as objective as possible and say this offense is just getting revolting. And thinking back to the last time the Bears played the Packers, it feels like it takes Justin Fields rolling to his left, throwing the ball 28 yards downfield to the middle against the grain to find Allen Robinson to spark anything in this offense. It feels like the Bears find a way to kill their own offensive drive most of the time, and then when they finally get something going, it's short-lived. But all that to say, whether it's Dalton or Fields, there's too much argument I've seen between Bears fans about whether or not Fields is struggling or not, and I don't think it matters, personally, because whether Justin Fields is good this year or not isn't the problem or the purpose. Justin's getting valuable experience, and I'll be the first to tell you guys, right, that yes, I do unfortunately remember those days when Matt Forte was the whole offense. Like, I remember at one point, wasn't he above 50% on like the total scrimmage yards? Like, it was Matt Forte, and nobody else was really getting anything. But those were the days. But so I feel like the word, or like at this stage, just so that I can get this out with the 10:30 crowd still here. If Dalton plays against Arizona, doesn't hurt my feelings. If Dalton plays against Green Bay, I don't mind. I mean, rib injuries are slow to heal, generally speaking. These things aren't immediate, and the Bears season is not in dire enough straits as far as win-loss record, playoffs, anything that matters, right? That I want Justin to play at the expense of his future health, especially when it comes to the two legitimately really hard teams that the Bears have on their schedule left. Like, Fields can play against the Vikings. Fields can still get good experience. 2 games against the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Giants. There are a lot of games on this schedule that that I hope he plays that aren't the Cardinals and that aren't the Packers. It's not about running scared. It's about Matt Nagy could probably put the end on his career. I hate that joke, because Matt Nagy at this point could trot Dalton out, lose the Cardinals, lose the Packers. He's 4-9, probably gets fired at that point, and then at least the locker room gets an answer. I know, Jordan, you're big on locker room chemistry. One thing I'll throw out there, I know that we're in the middle of an all-22 stream, but I feel like the Bears are a very philosophical place right now, so we can talk about this, right? But I feel like there's something to the idea that the locker room, Eddie Jackson had to answer a question about the Fire Nagy chants. Eddie Jackson, for what it's worth, this guy right here had to say, fans, stop chanting Fire Nagy's not helping anything, right? I get it. I mean, the locker room has to be in a state of just waiting for an answer right now. Whether it's Nagy's fired, Nagy's staying, who's here next year, who is my coach, right? Like, these are the kinds of things that I know I look at, and I'm thinking the locker room wants an answer just as badly as the fans. You know what I mean? Thanks so much, Ace. Unbelievably kind of you. Thanks for jumping on in. Like, I look at this team right now, and I can't help but think that they're all just dying to know what, like, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know what I mean? Like, the whole team is just waiting for the derelict ship to find its station. I mean, Nynisha, if we do fire Nagy, we'll keep the other staff for a year, but at least the team knows what and who they're playing for. Because right now they're playing for Nagy, yes. But in an interim setting, they're playing for their own jobs. They're playing for whether it's personal pride, future money. There are a lot of reasons for a professional to play, right? And like you're saying, Akusai, I do think that everything's kind of wound up like a spring, right? I mean, I have to imagine that there's just tension that if you fired Nagy, you'd be able to relieve. And whether this is about the Bears playing better, truly, that's not the point. Like, I personally think it's just about answers, future, right? Nobody wants to go to work every day with a performance review over their head. I had a coach in lacrosse, or like I played lacrosse growing up, a lot of it anyways, and he had this idea that every single day was a tryout, and I know I hated that because A, it wasn't. He tended to have his entrenched starters, but B, that concept of every single day you could lose your job. It works for some people. I get the security thing. I think there are a lot of people that like security, knowing what they can work on and what they don't. But yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where I find myself thinking that this Bears team could use 2 losses, right? Cardinals and Packers are 2 easy ways to get those. The Packers playing really good football right now, and the Cardinals have been owning the league with Colt McCoy. So I don't think that the Bears have great prospects going into this weekend, especially with Dalton under center. But then again, every time you need the Bears to lose, they tend to win. And every time you need the Bears to win, they tend to lose. So until that final score ends, I know what I'll be sitting there thinking of. Oh man, Peter, I was an attackman and a midfielder. I played both, but either way, getting back to defense talk, like, let's see what we got here. You start to see a lot of, especially as the game goes on, the Bears wanted to bracket TJ Hawkinson, which can't be too surprising. Hawk's a really solid player, but these are the kinds of things that, as far as watching the way that the oh man, there's truth to that, Derek, like that it just wouldn't change. But so one thing that's cool about watching modern defense per se is that you've actually got, let's say Hawkinson stemmed his route to here, right? The Bears have called a defense with 2 guys in these positions, not because both of them are man on Hawkinson. Like, it's not quite like Madden. It's more like, realistically speaking, they know that Hawkinson could run a curl in which Jalen would get him. He could run an out route. He could run a corner route. He could run straight up the seam. He could run inside, and he could run, or like an inside post, and he could run a true dig route, right? Like, I find the cool thing about watching these, when you take a look at this whole route tree, right, is these kinds of brackets, because this is the sort of thing that they did, by the way, to Darren Waller in Las Vegas. This is how you do them. You end up with one safety that's in position waiting for stuff over the middle and potentially ready to take the guy vertical, and another corner who's ready for all of the other stuff that's on the other side. I mean, Hawkinson's a special player. The Bears certainly treated him like it, especially on formations where they knew they liked to use him. Ejax at this point bails out, tries to robot back, and kind of loses his footing. Ends up in position enough, all things told, but Goff's just got to throw the ball away. And I think the Lions actually draw a hold on this call, or on this play with Robert Quinn. But it's always cool watching the way the coverage net operates, because Eddie Jackson doesn't end up quite as out in space as Trevis Gibson, who was not as bad as you would normally, or not normally expect. Gibson will have the days where he gets victimized. This wasn't really one of them. He actually made a couple of solid plays, and other than that, got largely ignored, which, hey, you take those. They're wins, just like anything else. But so you end up with, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think that's cool too, Case, right? That no matter what happens, like on brackets, you end up where one guy, maybe they're not needed as much, but you've covered the person that you want, and everybody else picks up their assignments on the back end. Deshaun, did I do it again? Man, Akusai, the fact that we've got 2 players named Gibson eats me alive. That eats my lunch. But so this next play, I think, is hilarious. This one, it's just a basic, solid defensive call right here, where they have Hawkinson. I think that's Hawkinson, but he's covered. He's running an over route. Jackson's got him. He's running up the seam. Gibson's got him. Corner's got the other one. So Goff's going to check it down right here because nothing's really open, and that's the kind of play that you want on 2nd and 20. I mean, downfield concept. Bears cover it up really nicely. They play really well out of too high, which can't surprise anybody. That's their base defense, and they pass off zones really, really nicely. But so, let's see here. Oh, man. Kusai, speaking of the color rush days, we're wearing the orange jersey. I don't know how everybody feels about the orange jersey. I'm sure there's some people in the chat that love the orange jersey. Feel free to like if you like the orange jersey, and also like if you like the blue jersey other than that. But I feel like the Bears are picking a goofy day to wear orange when they face the Cardinals at 4 and 7, but that's just me because that's a very big jersey to go get obliterated in. But you get the idea. I think this play is really funny because when you talk about corners, you often end up talking about crafty things. I think Jalen Johnson gets beat here, conventionally speaking. Like, you take a look at this receiver, he's running a post, and he gets Jalen to turn his hips out there, right? So he should be beat. But what Jalen's going to do is he's going to spin back into the middle of the field and almost literally set a pick for his wide receiver. I don't think Goff's throw would have been good enough anyways, because you're about to see Goff basically throw this ball to the moon. But when you watch Jalen, he pretty much deliberately gets in the way of a deep post, and I don't know if it's on purpose, like intentionally to slow the guy down, but he's sure in the way and makes that ball look a lot more uncatchable than it is. I've always wondered whether this kind of thing's a true corner technique per se, or whether it's just, hey, you got lucky. But I definitely noticed it watching back through the game, finding myself thinking, oh, that's sneaky. But laughed a little bit, you move on. It's 3rd down. It's like 3rd and 20. The Lions holding penalties really kept putting them in a hole. This is the 3rd drive we've already seen deal with one, and they are not working well off of them, to say the least. But so from there, I feel like the Lions, look, I don't want to say they like blew a gasket or something. We don't need to be melodramatic, but the Bears start to get a whole bunch of stops off of these. At this point, apologies. At this point, the Lions go back to trying to establish the run game a little bit, and it does not work great for them. Got to be honest with you. I mean, this is where that run game, 8 yards only helps you so much, right? Where every time you run the ball, you're hoping to get 5, 6, at least 4 yards. And on a play like this where you get 3, are you behind the chains? Do you want another run? A lot of people out there, I feel like, forget. Bilal gets, I don't want to say he gets like held, you know? But if you take a look at Bilal Nichols here, he's battling. I haven't gotten a good read on whether Bilal Nichols has earned an extension per se this season. It looks like he's right on the border of getting held. I mean, I think he is, but in terms of did it affect the play enough, the running back, if he'd taken that lane, probably would have drawn a hold, and instead he gets like 3 yards, no holding call. But either way, Lions end up behind the chains. Quinn right here. I think Nichols is a very good player. I also think he might be one of those guys where the agent wants more than he might be worth, but that's for the negotiators to figure out, not me. If it's me, I think under $5 million a year or so, you keep him. I mean, he's not had a great statistical year, so maybe you could get him for a fairly cheap extension. Think like Mario Edwards kind of extension, and at that point, I'd love keeping him. He's young talent. Like, you hang on to that kind of thing, but it depends, like you're talking about, Jordan, on whether he wants an RRH deal, because if he wants an RRH deal, I think he can go get it somewhere else, or at least try to, and you take the comp pick and try to find somebody like him. That's my 2 cents. I'm very comp pick heavy this year in particular because I don't think 2022 is boding to be a phenomenal year for the Bears, but 2023 might be, and that's where those comp picks start to really matter. But so then on this play, I actually found, I think this is one of the most interesting plays I've watched in quite some time, because this is the first example I've really seen of, I think, a quarterback throwing it outright early, right? So here's the play, right? We'll draw it up in just a second. But so you end up with this check down that gets absolutely nothing. He ends up dropped for a drop for a stop well behind the line to gain, and you're wondering, well, how in the world did that happen, right? Like, what happened here? How in the world did he end up so, you could call it like he's got a ton of space here, and it's a really nice tackle from Burns, don't get me wrong, but there's 3 defenders, and what was he going to do? Like, as long as Burns held this outside edge, you could say it's a nice offensive concept case, but like, how does that succeed? And then you see TJ Hawkinson over here. It gives you the idea. What are they running? And I think they were running 2 slants right here to try to draw some of these middle field defenders away from TJ Hawkinson running a smash concept alongside that. I can't tell if 11 motion's over, but I think he does. So you end up with 11 motioning and ending up on this side of the field with Hawkinson running a smash over the top, and I don't think Goff let it develop long enough. Now, you could say something about the pressure, and I'd hear you. I mean, I don't think it's a particularly pressured pocket, but Hawkinson hasn't gotten deep enough to affect any of the defenders in the area. You have to at least let Hawkinson get to the point where he's going to break, or the defense isn't going to react. They don't need to, right? But Goff throws this ball so early that Burns triggers down and gets to make a nice little highlight reel play along with Crawford, there, number 21, who everybody's excited, big third down stop. But this is one of those that I think is extremely interesting because they just get a break of Goff making a mistake. You know what I mean? But so let's see. Jordan, I think it's really intriguing, like that idea of whether shifting to a middle of the field safety concept and letting Eddie sit midfield would help him. I think the trouble that a lot of defenses are struggling with, I mean, look, the Chiefs are the outlier, right? Because the Chiefs get people playing too high all the time because Mahomes seems like he's really struggling against it, and I have not watched enough Mahomes tape to really know. I'm just going off of the smart people that I trust and what they argue about on Twitter whenever I have the time to actually read that stuff. But the key here, Jordan, I think comes down to the idea that I think defensive coordinators are starting to lose their belief that one middle of the field safety that stay here can actually cover the whole field. That no matter what you do, those edge files are always going to be there. And I think a lot of defensive coordinators don't like that. Like, let's get to the wide angle so that we can kind of see what you're talking about. That when you drop to this point right here, if the Lions wanted to, if they wanted to attack these areas of the field, Jackson's in position to get there. But also, if they want to come up the middle, Jackson's in position to get there. And while I agree, I mean, I think you want a good second safety so that Jackson, quote unquote, has that sidekick. I also don't think that there's one safety defenses for a reason. That while the classic strong safety, the Ike Taylor to Troy Polamalu would be awesome, and I want one, right, for this Bears defense, I think the key really is that between 2 safeties, you have reasonable ability to cover the entire back end through within creative means. So if you do want to drop Trevis Gibson to the middle of the field, like the Bears did with Jackson and Amos all the time, you can cover a good chunk of it with one safety in God knows where. Could be there, could be there, could be anywhere. He could be you, he could be me, that whole thing. But I think a lot of the defenses are just in starting from too high, like the Brandon Staley idea, right? Sean Desai, Vic Fangio, it all comes back to Fangio at the end of the day. That you end up with people that are just starting from these too high positions because too high suggests if you pass on us, you better be ready for us to stop you. I think that's really all it is. That's my 2 cents anyways. That without, say, what's his name, Cam Chancellor, and a lot of the personnel that you had in Seattle, it's harder to run those middle of field closed defenses with near the success that the Legion of Boom had, because like with any great defense, it always comes back to, is your talent legendary? And if your talent isn't legendary, you end up with defenses that can get eaten alive, especially since the Legion of Boom got so popular around 2011 that people have been playing against cover 3 and cover 1 for now a decade. Obviously longer than that, right? But exactly like you're saying, Jordan, the key for me anyway is that I've now seen, throughout studying the 2019, 2020, and 2021 offenses, I've seen so much vanilla cover 1, vanilla cover 3, that I think the NFL is just used to it, right? And there's some truth to that case, that if you had Jalen Johnson and Kyle Fuller in his prime, I think that there's a lot more you could do with Eddie. But honestly, I'd just pepper good secondary players in, right? Like, just pick out good secondary players. A lot of good secondary players make a lot of good things happen. Bryce Callahan's impact is noticed when he leaves, but when he's in, he's like the 5th best corner on the team, or 4th, I think. Not corner, DB. You hear what I'm saying? Think about the way that Bears fans treated Adrian Amos, and you'll remember just what it's like to have, quote-unquote, too many good DBs, that it can be hard to notice just how much each one's doing, but collectively, they all, like, so this is the way I always like to draw it, right? Is a good or a bad DB, let's say that they have a very small range. I don't know. That's the best way that I would think about it. But a good DB might have a slightly bigger one, right? Where there's more that you would expect Eddie Jackson to be able to do within where he is. Well, when everybody is pretty good, you end up with a coverage net that starts to overlap with itself. And offenses that don't really know where to go with the ball, because as these guys move around, the circles move with them, and there's just not a lot of places to go with the ball safely, and God knows you don't want to give up an interception, especially if you pair them with a guy like, in this case it's Travis Gibson, but Robert Quinn on the other end, applying pressure from the other side. So then the whole thing can kind of cave in on itself when Alec Ogletree's coverage net is only so big, and Christian Jones's coverage net's pretty small, and you end up finding those spaces, right? You end up saying, well, okay, so if we move Jalen Johnson way up the field, just like that, and we get Travis Gibson to follow him, then we can get this receiver, let's say, one-on-one with Christian Jones or Alec Ogletree, and we like either of those matchups, right? That's the problem with a lot of defenses right now, or at least with the Bears defense, is that I did it again. You're right, Deshaun Gibson. But so if there is a problem with the Bears defense at this moment, it's that if you don't want to deal with Jalen Johnson, if you don't want to deal with Eddie Jackson, you just don't have to. Like, there are enough players on the field that you can pick on that, whether it's checking the ball down and taking your 9 yards, or just living, like throwing it out of bounds, living to fight another day, there are enough ways that you can operate that you don't have to throw at them. I mean, I think we all remember as Bears fans, hopefully we were all there in 2018, right? But I'm sure we all remember that magical, was it Monday Night Football or was it Sunday Night Football, but that game against the Vikings where Eddie Jackson closed out the game with a tour de force of an interception, picking off a ball meant for Laquan Treadwell that, sure, it was a little long, but more than anything, Kirk tried to force it into an impossible window, and Eddie showed why it was impossible. At this point, the Bears don't have a lot of ways to create those same impossible windows that even Dalton is struggling to throw into the Lions defense against. Like, little mistakes that become interceptions. I mean, the latest interception that they've gotten in the last 5 games was Mark Andrews dropping a ball that hit him in the gut. I mean, a wonderful, phenomenal tight end just making a mistake. But outside of that, they really haven't sniffed a turnover. Especially not an interception. And I think there's a lot to be said for, I've seen the Vildor Island jokes, like there's a lot there. But let's keep walking through stuff. So from here, Lions get a pretty solid run. The Bears' run front is really struggling without Hicks. I mean, I don't want to pick on Hicks too specifically because, again, even these 8 to 9 yard runs, so long as it's not a back-breaker, you live with it, right? In this case, it's Goldman getting washed out of his file. I think it's Nichols gets pushed pretty well by 68. 44, or Alec Ogletree gets picked up by the guy that comes off of Goodwin. Neither of these defensive linemen command a double team per se, as Blackson just gets laid down on the ground right there, and the Lions pick up 8 to 9 tough yards. I mean, Akeem Hicks is really the heart and soul, I think, of this defense and has been. I don't know what the Bears are going to do without him, because it's an eventuality that there will be a world without Akeem Hicks, but I don't think Eddie Goldman's quite at that level, whether that's good news or insightful analysis. I think Goldman is a solid defensive lineman, but to pick on one, there are just too many plays where he doesn't look like vintage Goldman for me to want to say he's going to be our crown jewel on the defensive line. But with Mac on the team, I don't think anybody's looking for that. Even so, you need that quality interior guy. Here's a really solid play by Jalen Johnson, by the way. where Johnson's just going to follow his guy, and he's going to follow his guy beautifully. This is a design that I don't think the Lions were expecting to have to use here, because Johnson moves up to the line of scrimmage to play press, one of the rare other defenders that actually moves pre-snap. But in doing so, jams his guy, recognizes that there's an offensive lineman headed straight there, and says, "Oh, it's a screen, huh?" And just cuts underneath, makes the tackle. Lions lose 1.5 yards, right? So good, or like really nice play, opportunistic play, good recognition by Jalen as he gets to the wide receiver, brings him down for a nice loss. So Jalen's definitely a player, not just on account of stuff like that, right? But Jalen's a player that I know the Bears are looking to build on. I still think that Jalen's ideally a CB2. I respect him. I think he's an awesome corner, especially out of the second round. I think corners are hard to find, right? Anytime you can get a good corner, that's something to celebrate. And Jalen is a good corner. I think he'll even get better over time. And the fact that he's made it this far without, well, you know, I'm not even going to say it. I'm just going to imply it. The fact that he's still playing is such great news. So, like, especially for the future. But I do think that the Bears need to, I would love to see them consider him. Yeah. We think he's a CB2, or like we think he's a good player. But let's see if we can get somebody even better too. Because when you develop a DB net that looks like that, there's a lot of good things there. But so on this next one, I mean, you want to talk about like Goffisms? Crawford and DHC on this play both end up taking the same guy. I think that's Hawkinson, now that I look at it. But that's not the bracket that they're intending, right? One of these guys, namely it's him, are running free, but Goff doesn't see it. Goff misses the fact that he's got his guy wide open right here, right, on a deep dig, and instead checks it down to a running back that's covered up by Artie Burns, who makes a nice little play right there, right? But so you take a look. I mean, there are definitely mistakes that the Bears defense made that I don't know if it's like, it's not about whether they got caught on the broadcast or not. It's about their performance wasn't quite as good as I think the statistics make them look. A better team would punish them for stuff like this. Because yes, there's a little bit of pressure. I mean, like Blackson might be getting kind of close. Gibson's kind of in the neighborhood, but you'd hope that a tall, strong quarterback, for instance, ends up seeing he's got the deep dig, waiting just a little longer and hitting that window right now to then take it upfield, probably get to about there, so a solid like 20 yard, or like a solid 20 yard gain, something like that on 3rd and 6. And yeah, Jackson's gonna get upset about it, or he's excited there, sure, but it's a blown coverage. I mean, these things happen, you know. You hope they don't, right? But they do happen on all defenses at all times. But the Bears benefit from it. Thank you, Jared Goff, right? And you take those sometimes. But so let's see here. We're looking at, oh gosh, it's almost 11. So because it's almost 11, we're going to start hitting the highlights. Feel free to... yeah, wide open. Like talking from the other one. Let's see. Oh, it's pretty devastating. That's for sure, Draco. Were you talking the end zone angle? Yeah, it's wide open. Like, I love the end zone angle when you're talking quarterbacks, especially from this one where the back is to the quarterback. Because if he is, oh no, Allison's editing. So we don't have to go into whisper mode until a little later tonight because she's locked down doing photography stuff. But yeah, exactly like you're saying, Draco. I mean, I'm not even using the power freeze frame here. There's just nobody on him. Like, you can get that ball to Goff at this point, or not to Goff. You can get that ball to that receiver with no real problem, with just on a lofty, like, what is it, tap the X button in Madden? Like a quick little lob will end that ball wide open. But hey, you say thank you and you move on, right? But quarterback's a tough position, Ace. I feel like every time people are like, that guy's terrible, it's like, well, why is he bad? In Goff's case, I feel like he really struggles to read the field. I mean, it's simplistic, right? But I think he gets spooked by what defenses do, and when defenses aren't exactly what he thought they would be, he panics and he throws to his check down, or he says to himself on 3rd and 6. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to have to deal with, or I'm going to be throwing to the guy over the middle. And so he goes back to him instead of catching, like we're talking about, that in the progression, he might have found he didn't have to deal with it. And like you say, Nakusai, I feel like at the end of the day, Jared Goff's a real winner because even though he's probably a bust as far as number one picks go, he got paid a massive extension. So not even so much as like we all joke about how Chase Daniel's like one of the bag men of the NFL, but exactly, Jordan. I mean, if you took the draft status off of Jared Goff, I don't think he'd be considered near as good as he is, but he got that massive extension, so he sure got his bag. That's for certain. But so in this is where sometimes Desai can get a little too crazy, right? The complicated thing, by the way, Jordan, I have to say this because you talk about how Goff's the ultimate bust. The complicated thing about Goff is that I actually think he's good at something. I think when you give Jared Goff a throw he has to make, he can make that throw. I think there were a lot of tight windows he had to fit the ball into. I mean, you talk about Sean McVay, John, but like what McVay did was that McVay surrounded Goff with so many weapons and such a good offensive line that he could prescribe the play up to the point where Goff had to make the throw, and Goff was able to make that throw. There's a reason he got to 4,800 yards or whatever ridiculous figure he got to. It wasn't all yak, right? A lot of it was tough throws, precision throws, right? Like spot the satellite on it throws, but at least he didn't have to make the read. Or at least he didn't have to read too much. He'd just take a look at one guy and make the decision. That's where I feel like the Goff thing got so complicated, right? Is people were like, he's terrible. And it's like, well, he's not good at seeing anything, that's for sure. But man, if I had a guy with his throwing ability and even like Dalton's head for where to go with the ball, you could do some things with him. There's a reason Sean McVay got as far as he did. But then you get into like the other stuff where people can start to, what is the word? Like, people can start to get a little crazy with the quarterback that they want. Like at this point, just to pick on a guy, right? I think Kyle Shanahan's offense is awesome. I think Kyle Shanahan schemes up a lot of things really beautifully. I think there's a reason that whether it's Nagy or tons of quarterbacks or like coaches all over the league, they're starting to copy a ton of the stuff that McVay and Shanahan do. And Shanahan seems to have picked Jimmy Garoppolo over Trey Lance, which I don't know. And I won't presume to know. Maybe Lance just isn't ready yet. Maybe. But it seems like there's something weird in San Francisco right now. I can't put my finger on it, but Kyle Shanahan's handling of the young quarterback is bizarre to me. And even if Fields is getting experience in maybe an offense he's going to completely throw away and maybe one of the worst offenses in the NFL, I am ultimately glad Fields is getting that experience, any experience at the NFL level, because like you're saying, Ace, I mean, Jimmy G is quietly having a pretty good year, but you didn't pay 3 first-round picks for Jimmy Garoppolo to have a solid year, but you get the idea. But maybe Akusai, hey, with Shanahan's offense, anything could look pretty good. But so Goff and the Lions made the occasional play here and there. You're actually going to see 3 solid tackles from Eddie that I think is hilarious. But that's Robert Quinn playing nickel corner right now. I don't really know what Desai's doing on this specific play. Like, I'll just stick with I don't really know, right? Because you got 3 down linemen. Maybe it was a shift, like a late shift that put Quinn there, but the all-22 starts on Quinn in the slot, and that's a choice. So he gets by Quinn. Eddie Jackson has to make. Jordan, I know you were talking about how you want Eddie to play goalie. He plays some goalie here. Like, he makes that hit at this point. This is where Christian Jones takes an unnecessary roughness penalty that feels right on the line of play through the whistle and a little bit of weak, right? Where they're trying to rip the ball out, but Jones throws him on the ground, and that draws a flag, which 15 yards is always a bummer. And I hope we could agree with that, But so then Quinn gets through. Jackson at that point does a really good job. I thought this was fun. I just had my eyes on 4 basically as I watched just about every single snap, and Jackson does a really good job of covering that curl route. If it wasn't Jackson, I think Goff would have thrown it, and in fact, he looked that way when you watch Goff's eyes. He took a look He saw Jackson in the area, and he moved away from him right there. He's at least thinking about it, but then he panics because of the defensive guy coming in front of him. He doesn't actually take a look there. He gets spooked a little too early, and then just flicks the ball over the middle, gets his guy right there. But so then immediately after this, the Lions put together a really nice play. But so yeah, that's Quinn breaking through the line. Gibson has a solid little rush right there, right? Where credit to Gibson and obviously Quinn. It's actually fun watching the Bears edge rushers in this game. So Quinn's got that dip and rip that he's not Quinn. Gibson has a dip and rip that he's really starting to get leverage out of. He did a lot of this in the preseason too, so it's nice to see it carry over because Bears young guys are going to be the future. I mean, there's a point where I know I'm looking, we'll get into that later. But so then on this next play, the Lions just beat the Bears badly. Like, this isn't a great sign. In the world of, I want my defense to be really good, oh boy. Oh boy. The Lions block everybody. Like, this is where I think you're missing Hicks. But Jackson sticks him, right? Like, in the world of Jackson's a strugglesome tackler, this is that goalie that you're looking for as a safety, right? Where they get him downhill, they, it's Jackson or it's nobody, and he beats a block, and he sticks the runner, and he puts him on the ground, doesn't miss it, doesn't go for the feet, just stand-up tackle, drives him to the ground, ball's dead at the 30, which, going back, again, we could talk about the fact that the entire defensive line gets washed off the ball. They do. We could talk about the fact that the linebackers don't play particularly well, kind of get lost in the shuffle here. But you're talking about Alec Ogletree and 92. I don't even know 92 or 92's name at this point. I didn't have time to look it up before the show. But the Bears are playing without Smith, without Mack, without without Vildor, without Shelley. They're playing down so many even regular starters, whether they got benched or hurt, that the fact that they lost a couple times, not great. You know what I mean? But Jackson at this point gets over, makes a tackle like he knows his role, like he's wearing a single-digit number. Thumbs up. You take that. Is it Danny T? There's no way 92 is Danny T. It can't be, right? Because Jones is 57. You know what? Hang on. We got to do it now. Chicago Bears roster. Team roster. Let's see. 92. It can't be. It's Caleb Johnson. Johnson's playing. We're at the point where Caleb Johnson is playing, which, hey, there's something to be said for the whole play the kids movement. I mean, there's reason to do that, but man, I knew Danny T was 6, Jordan. It's weird every time I look at it. It would be him switching numbers mid-season, but goodness gracious. Oh yeah, missing Danny T. I mean, I wouldn't pick personally, Mike, Danny T out as somebody we're really, dying to, or we're really losing. I feel like Danny struggled this year, but. Yeah, that's Caleb playing. So at least he's getting defensive snaps. Goff misses a throw. We move on to this one. This was Gibson's best play of the game. We're coming up on the end of the defensive stuff, but like you're talking about, Jordan, you mentioned Marshall, by the way. Great seeing you. Always fun seeing folks in here. But so, Gibson makes a nice play here that shows you what you would want to see out of a potential second safety. You take a look at the way that the Decide defense works, and right now it's Eddie who's dropping into the center field role with Gibson moving up. The offense has no idea Gibson's coming. He sheds a block. He makes a nice little tackle right here. Bears get a stop for a 1-yard loss. If you had, say, an Antoine Winfield, if you had a Trey Boston, if you had some of these other, whether you call them free safeties or just, really capable DBs, you can do even more disguise stuff out of a 2-high set that can then make plays. And then, let's see, is it this play? No, it might be the next one. But that's a really nice... that was a really nice roll and tackle by Gibson. On this one, Jeremy Chin's a really great example of exactly what I'm talking about. I feel bad blaming Gibson on this one. I think this one might be on Ogletree more than anything else. This is complex at this point because you're going to see Ogletree hit a jam right there, but Gibson's not in bad position. Jalen's not in bad position. I don't think the corner out here is in particularly poor position either, but Ogletree jams his man, and I think he's supposed to be covering him instead of just jamming him and spying Goff or something like that. But the ball gets kicked out to the running back. Ogletree misses. He's late on getting to him. The corner tries to roll over and make a play. In this case, it's DHC. It's just not fast enough, and it's first down, right? Jordan Battle would be awesome. Jordan, like if they did pick up Jordan Battle to play against or to play next to Eddie Jackson, I mean, that is an Alabama duo that would just be phenomenal, right? And then we get to the final good per se Lions play that, well, not really, but the big Lions play of the game that probably had everybody breathing really deep, right? Where right at this exact moment, the score is currently, let me see, it's 13-7 Bears versus Lions, and now it's not. Now it's going to be it's about to be 13-13 because Jalen Johnson gets caught keeping his eyes on his man. So the Bears are basically dropping into cover 3. That's the gist of what we're looking at. And in cover 3, especially on the red zone, or like in the red zone, a very common play call is to call basically a scissors look, where you have, say, your tight end, like TJ Hawkinson, running across the field after a clear out route takes the middle. So they scissor right there, and you try to confuse that corner. And Jalen's general role, this is tough. Like, when I talked to some defensive guys that work in this defense, they pointed out number 33 in particular, which I thought was rough because basically Jalen has to honor his route, but then get back to deal with Hawkinson, who ends up wide open, right? He ends up totally open, throws fairly easy, gets into the end zone, touchdown. But what's supposed to happen from like the defense's architecture is that Jalen sees his guys going vertical, especially sees he's starting to step inside, and breaks and sits down to go get that route right there, which, hey, had he done it, could have been a pick, or maybe Goff just wouldn't have thrown the ball. But either way, we've seen Johnson make phenomenal plays. I think he's a very good corner. Plays like this are where I think he could grow a little bit. I think he just got caught hunting, or at least maybe he got to the blue paint and worried a little bit. Said to himself, I'm in the end zone. I really don't want to just like let this guy go and give up a free touchdown, and I would get it. But definitely a spot where whether it's better DBs in the future, more time in the system, you're hoping you don't see blown coverages. And like you're saying, I mean, yeah, Case, it's a good throw by Goff. It's a good little concept. I think it's a very solid concept that creates the confusion, and you tip your hat to the offense when you get there. It's a nice throw. Like stepping backwards, places it perfectly so Hawkinson can catch it, waddle or like step on into the end zone and go out of bounds. That's a thumbs up for the throw. Goff's a good thrower, but the Lions take the lead. And if you're like me as a Bears fan, you're like, you've got to be kidding me. Like they take a too many men right there. This Lions team that the Bears beat is not a good football team. And while their defense made some plays, as we've kind of reviewed, the more and more I just stew on this game and keep watching it, the defense looks a little bit better with Jackson, but they're still missing too many of their fangs. Like, without Hicks, without Mack, without Quan especially, there's too many vulnerabilities that I think that they have across the team to feel good going into a game against the Cardinals. But thankfully, they're already 4-7. So if your expectations were high, that's on you, which I hate to be that guy. But the Bears are definitely not a team that you're looking at for a championship run at this stage. And I think we are all okay with that. But so then we'll move on to, let's say, like the final drive of the final piece of the game. Really all that matters is that the Lions shot themselves in the foot one final time. Like, we could go through a painstaking evaluation of everything, but the Lions just make some really solid plays here where they get the ball to a check down. Reynolds makes 21 miss, moves right up the field. Like, you watch this again, this is just a player making a good play, right? Like, this should be a better tackle than it is from a defensive scheme perspective, but Burns doesn't roll over. 21 doesn't make the original tackle, lets his guy right on back inside, and so on and so forth. Gabe, originally dislikes were dislikes were always the same engagement as likes, so whether YouTube removes them or not, I didn't know. I'm apparently not kept up. I get them wanting to try to help people with mental health and so on and so forth, if that matters, but it doesn't hurt my feelings to take away the ability to express disapproval, that's for sure. Jackson here again. Jordan, I'm curious as to whether this meets your willing tackle barometer. I thought this was the goaliest play of the day, where he gets a big, thick block thrown in his chest and still works his way out, gets an arm tackle on the runner, and basically is part of slowing him down enough to get to what ticker? Let me see. But so but anyways, let's see. They did what? Maybe that's why, Ace. Honestly, I think that'd be hilarious. But so let's see. Like, that's the sort of thing that I know I look at. Oh, the going away ticket. That's so funny. But yeah, so Eddie helps make a nice little play right there. Like, let's see. That is super weird. But so, yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. YouTube policy, blah, blah, blah. You guys get the idea. But so then the Lions throw an unsuccessful run. They get to the second down, and then they penalize themselves into oblivion. I mean, at this point, let's see. Censored, I believe it. Like, whether it's like CNN COVID things, I bet they were just getting ratioed really hard over the last, honestly, probably 8 years. Like, it's been on both ends of it. But from here, anyways, not getting into that, we get a false start. We get a hold. And from there, it's like 1st and 30. Yeah, WY. A playoff team, or a bottom 10 team that's still one game behind. But so a whole bunch of penalties put the Lions in pretty much an unwinnable spot. And would you believe it, this is the last time they touch the ball. I mean, I think this probably shocked them because it's the fourth quarter with over half the quarter left. Right? They're just so woefully behind the sticks that it's not like we're going to pin it on the Lions that on 3rd and we can't even see the marker. Like, I don't know where it is. Let's see. Oh, there it is. 3rd and there. 3rd and there. Soak this in. Look at that distance. This is so funny. Just seeing the distance that we had to pan out on the all 22 to get back to the marker. I like that. I think that's hilarious. But so to penalize the Lions for not converting obviously would be some pretty intense scrutiny, but yeah, they don't hit it here. They're winning by a point, and then the Bears just grind all the way back. Yeah, exactly, Mike. They didn't get the marker in the all 22 originally. So the Lions punt, the Bears get the ball, and honestly, the Bears led on a really gorgeous drive that clinches the game. And we could talk a little bit about the offense now because you've seen some defense. I think we're going to see some problematic stuff from the defense coming up on Sunday. There is, I say this on Wednesday night, right? I'm glad you guys are here. It's always fun doing these. It's always fun having you guys. Any support that you have for me is super well appreciated. I really can't wait for the off season at this point because my work, like the job that I do, should slow down a little bit, and I have the time to go through, scrutinize some things, really try to get back to the content that I know that I want to put out. But between the group of us that's here at 11:15 Central Time, going over the Thanksgiving game between the 9-1 Lions and the now 4-7 Bears, 10-1 Lions, I should say. I can say that it could get rough on Sunday, and there's not a ton to care about either. But I think we've kind of talked about that. Like, okay, the offense does well against the Cardinals, does better than expected. Are we keeping Nagy? No. Right? Like, the trouble is that things are bad enough that if they're bad, it confirms how you feel about it. And if it's good, it doesn't change how you feel about it. Right? Like, let me see. Oh, man, Mike, that's honestly a good prediction because I was sitting there thinking that the Cardinals would probably... I hadn't studied the Cardinals enough to know whether they would struggle or not. And when they underinvested in offensive line, I felt like, okay, this could be a real problem. Like this could be a real issue. But yeah, exactly, Derek. We're watching for flashes from young guys, but we're not going to play any young guys. I mean, for crying out loud, we're looking at a Bears team that, I'm not even joking, instead of playing Daz Newsome, they played Isaiah Coulter. You know what I mean? Like, this is one of those games that I feel like was extremely strange, because I know Jordan is one of the more fashion-forward, play the young guys in our chat right here, but we're going to keep playing Robert Quinn instead of trading Robert Quinn, because why would you play Snowden or Kamara, right? Why would you do that? And we're not going to play Thomas Graham. We're going to play Artie Burns. We're not going to play Daz Newsome. We're going to play Isaiah Coulter. Like, I get it. I do, in theory, that you want your veteran guys to do their veteran thing, but when you're so low on the depth chart, or like so low in the win-loss total, I feel like you start looking for the future, but Nagy's not here in the future. Pace may not be here in the future, so they don't want to. I mean, it's not good. It's definitely not good. But so we'll have to just sort of wait that out. Right? Like, exactly like you said, we'll play Chris Tabor over DeAndre Houston Carson, for crying out loud. Like, it's problematic what we're looking at least I think so. And I get it. Thomas Graham, rookie, so on and so forth. I said that at the top of the show. I really believe that. But there is real stuff that I look at. And, oh, Peter, I was thinking about this. Dalton's going to throw an interception. I think it'll happen. And the Fire Nagy chants are going to get loud. Like, what do you guys think? I mean, I think personally that that those Fire Nagy chants, because it is in vogue right now in Chicago in anything related. We heard Fire Nagy at a Bulls game. We heard Fire Nagy at a high school game that was not cool. We heard a Fire Nagy chants at an Illinois game. Like, all the offense has to do is fail on third down, right? And it's going to get nasty out there. Like, the fans are not happy. This is a game that nobody wants it to be home. Like, it's wild. It's everywhere, Nanisha. And so this will be one that I think the fans are ready to, honestly, Ace, that's not a bad comparison. Like, it's going to be like 2014, probably. I mean, going through some stuff, like, the Bears opened up with the world's most basic West Coast call. You know it's a Dalton game because they ran Dragon. They used to run this with Mitch all the time. Dalton reads it out. He sees, oh, look at that. The corner is sitting on the slant. I'm going to throw it to the out. And the Bears' first play of the day is a 2-yard gain through the air. And I think it's so funny, by the way. Like, this was one of those games that truly I thought it was kind of comic to watch, because I was ready for the 300-yard performance. I was like, just by the nature of how hard it's been for Fields to get yards, it's going to be easy. Like, and like, Dalton's going to get a bunch of yards just because it's the Lions, and everybody's going to go, told you. Fields sucks. Like, you get the idea. But, I mean, for crying out loud, our recent favorite Packers fan, Atheist for a Cause or whatever, there's a reason he's not in the chat tonight. You can tell, because it's the Lions. Nobody cares. Like, it was hilarious watching this offense go up, and sure, they got some solid yards yards on the ground. Yay. Like, I don't mean to be too negative, right? That's not the goal here. The goal is to talk about how almost whatever the Bears were doing, like, here they've got Jimmy Graham blocking the backside of this play, which is genius. David Montgomery is a really fun downhill runner. Honestly, Graham's almost lucky that he didn't get called for a hold. But so I feel like it's always wild to me how much yardage David Montgomery can get after contact, or like after contact. Oh man, Jordan, if you like negativity, we were after it starting after about play 9 last game. But so, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Case. In a West Coast system, you're trying to get a whole bunch of space, and I can't believe I'm saying this, in this game specifically, I think Dalton actually struggled to get the ball out fast enough for some of that space. It was almost like he wanted to wait to fit the throw in. I don't know quite what was up with it. Oh man, this, by the way, I don't know how many however many people were like me, but when I saw this live, like, let's go through it. So Dalton reads it out. He sees Kmet coming open, and he's right. Like, that's the correct read, but he throws it on such a line, it almost looks like he didn't see, like, now Anzalone. Anzalone does a really nice job getting a hand on it, but he shouldn't have like the ability to make a play on it. Like, so this is kind of like the one that we talked about with Dalton, or not Dalton, Fields, around, what was it, the Lions game? Last game? Yes. He's open, and it's a great play by Anzalone. You also, as a quarterback, don't want to let him make that play. Like, whether it's lofting the ball a little bit over, whether it's a pump fake, like a hitch and throw, something, you got to deal with them, right? And when that ball was here, how many people thought it was a pick? Because I did, right? Like, just watching watching this ball hang in the air like that, I was like, and interception. Like, this was bananas, seeing the stuff that Dalton kind of got away with that, like Ace kind of just said, it wouldn't have against other defenses. And this is the Lions. Like, this is the team without a win. But as that ball hung up there, and there's nothing Kmet can do about it, his momentum's going the complete other direction. It falls for one of those blooper singles, to use MLB terms. Like, this was a great tip by Anzalone. I'm sure, I bet he thought it would be picked off, like, based on this tip. But it was not a good start for the Bears offense, to say the least. And so, yeah, he's lucky he doesn't get picked there. And then I thought this was hilarious, too, because now that Dalton's playing, you better believe we're going to call our one out route of the game, right? So we've talked about this on how much Fields loves or out routes, but here we get a good one, and Mooney runs it beautifully. Like, credit to it. He's wide open. Mooney runs a great route here. I hope Mooney keeps running this route, right? But the throw's not good enough. And part of that's because this isn't Dalton's game. To just, way to go, Awabono. Honestly, respect. Like, I bet that was a nice Thanksgiving. I had a great time with my family. Kind of missed mentally most of the third quarter, and I don't really think much of that. Like, that's not a problem to me. But so, at least live. Watched it again, obviously, here. So then you take a look at the the backside of this, and you'll see Mooney runs a really good route. And let's see right there. Look at all that separation. This is as he's slowing down. It's the separation Bears fans crave, right? The throw's a little behind, makes him stop for it. Do I want Mooney to catch this ball? Sure. Like, yes. I also don't think he's a wide receiver one. Like, I'm not trying to critique Mooney too hard. Number 11 is a good wide receiver 2 and a really awesome wide receiver 3. If you had 2 wide receivers that were better than Darnell Mooney, your offense could do things. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I would think about it. Like, the way that I would best describe it. But exactly, Jordan. Throw could be better, for sure. Like, do I want your receiver to theoretically come down with a contested ball like that? Yeah, sure, yes. Who's going to say no, right? But he got open enough. You can make a better throw. You can get that ball further out to the sidelines. Mike, I think that's cool to think that Mooney could be a wide receiver 1, but I think if he was a wide receiver 1, I mean, let's not forget, Mike, on the 2020 Patriots, Damiere Byrd was the wide receiver 1. So anybody can be, right? It's a matter of, in a healthy offense, would they be, right? And I would tell you that I think Darnell Mooney's like ceiling would be like a Michael Gallup, not 2021 Michael Gallup because he's wide receiver 3, but the I think that Mooney, and in a perfect world, right, could be Tyler Lockett on the Seahawks, where you've got that DK Metcalf wide receiver 1, and then you've got your wide receiver 2 in Darnell Mooney. But that's my 2 cents, right? And yes, Jordan, everything is just gruelingly hard. Like, the Bears make basic offense look unbelievably difficult. But, Oren, I think it's a little bit of wide receiver, or a little bit of height. I also think there's something to be said for Darnell struggles with contested catches, which is fine. But a wide receiver 1 often wants to be, often wants to have somebody that you can turn to make those tough catches. I would love to see a little more out of that. I also really don't think it's insulting to say that a guy isn't one of the 30th best or 30 best receivers in the NFL in a league full of good receivers. Like, I don't think that, just to pick on somebody who I think catches a lot of heat, I don't think Mooney has the talent ceiling that, say, Odell Beckham Jr. does. You know what I mean? Can he produce like OBJ? Sure, right? Like, maybe, especially since OBJ has not been productive for a little while. But that said, I also don't think that we need that, right? CeeDee Lamb right now is, depending on your perspective, a wide receiver too. Who cares? Like, it's not an insult, you know? CeeDee Lamb's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So is Amari Cooper. I think those two have a really nice relationship, and I think Mooney could easily be the speed threat that Kmet, as, like, in a perfect world, you could have Mooney basically dominate, let's say, let's see here. Let me try to draw a decent vein, right? Where Mooney could dominate this whole area of the field. Everything past about 8 to 10 yards would be Mooney's domain, as he'd stem routes up and he could curl back, make fun of it all you want. It's an option. He could run out routes. He could run out routes the other way, crossers, deep threats, seam routes. Mooney could do all of that, while, say, Cole Kmet could dominate more of more of the underneath stuff, littler things. Like, Cole could take quick stick routes. He could take curl routes, stick routes. There's a lot of things Cole can do that take advantage of the fact that if Darnell runs over there and Cole runs there, you're going to create that space. Exactly, Albono. T.Y. Hilton is a great name for, like, what you're thinking of Darnell Mooney as. And then if you add that one more guy, you're starting to put people out there that are real weapons. You can do that, but exactly. I hear you, Jordan. I do like separators. I think separators are great. That's part of what makes the Metcalf thing so fun. OG Fields fan, you're asking who would I pick as head coach? So first of all, I think head coach is a pretty political choice, just to be real. Like, it's about who the coach knows or the GM knows normally, especially since I'm pretty anti-Pace overall. But if I assumed that Pace was here and, so we've got Pace here and Sean Payton isn't available, because I've heard that dream, and honestly, that's a dream I'm willing to dream. But assuming I can't have Sean Payton, which would be fun, I'm still on the Dabble train, like, if only because I like the attitude, but there's a lot of this head coaching stuff that I'll tell you I don't want to act like an expert in. I wish I could be in the interview rooms, like, so all the people out there could hear me, right? Because I know everybody's going to give their head coach opinion while I'm talking, but getting, what is it? Oh my gosh. Getting Kellen Moore freaks me out a little bit, just because I think everybody's going, John DeFilippo, Joe Brady, like, so on and so forth. The bright side to me about Dabble is he's been in the league for quite some time. I think back to Kyle Shanahan, right? Where, yes, Kyle Shanahan, offensive genius. Everybody's happy with him, right? He was also like a 10-year coordinator. You know, he was in the league for a very long time compared to Nagy, who was an offensive coordinator for 1 year. I think Shanahan had not only grown up with his dad in the NFL and had been an assistant for forever, but he was an offensive coordinator for at least 5 years. Dabble has that resume, right? I think that matters. I think Josh Allen had a phenomenally successful 2020 season that I don't know if he'll ever repeat, because I don't know if he can live up to that billing. Like, this is the same Josh Allen that was considered an MVP frontrunner going into the season and got most of the Vegas odds, right? Do you think that Josh Allen is that good and that consistent? I'm struggling to believe it, right? I think Roman is a phenomenal choice. I don't know why he doesn't have a job yet. Like, the first question I'll ask is, why this year? Like, what has scared people enough, right, about Roman to push him away? What's going on in the interview room, right? But it's not like I'm upset about that. Derek, I think that Dave Tube is an awesome Bears idea. Don't get me wrong. But the only reason that I come down on the Dave Tube thing is that Tube has if he would have been the Bears, like on the Bears radar, he would have been there years ago. I mean, like Tube goes all the way back to what, 08? Like is it further than that? Like is it 06? But like I fully respect the Tube idea. I think personally, if you're a Tube guy, you're a Harbaugh guy. Like I think that would be the 1-to-1 comparison. Like if you want the managerial head coach, you want Jim Harbaugh. You want the guy who is going to come in. He's going to be a tough-nosed, like, I love the Bears and I love hitting people. We're going to go out there. We're going to establish ourselves and I'm going to trust my coordinators and that's it, right? You are like bringing in Harbaugh. You might reasonably keep Sean Desai, maybe. I don't know. But at the very least, you've got both a head coach pedigree from Michigan. You've got a head coach pedigree from San Francisco. Pick either. Neither is a bad record, all things told. But exactly, Albona. The scary thing there becomes, well, what do you do if you end up losing a lot of his assistants? Meh. I mean, the trouble that I'm having at this point is, like, BG, I get freaked out with Kellen Moore because the question that I keep asking people that I don't get a great answer from is, while Kellen Moore's offense is awesome from a schematic perspective, I definitely really like a lot of Moore's things. I have to make that clear first. I also think that you could run Matt Nagy's offense with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, and that offensive line, plus Dalton Schultz, and you could make Nagy's offense look pretty good. Like, maybe not incredible, don't get me wrong, but like the amount of talent that Kellen Moore has to play with is outrageous. And he's dealt with injuries. He's proving himself, but he's been an offensive coordinator for 2 years. I would stay away if it was me. Plus, I don't think Dallas will let him go anyways. I think Jerry Jones would fire Mike McCarthy and promote Kellen Moore before Jerry Jones let Kellen Moore walk to take a job somewhere else. That's my 2 cents. I know nothing, but that's my like take is Kellen's gonna be in Dallas, so it's not even a question. I think Leftwich is definitely a good question. Like, I think at this point you start to have everybody pick on all these people. Like, I would tell you guys with a straight face that if you wanted to bring Baylor's Dave Aranda up, I'm listening, right? I'm willing to listen to anything. We don't have to just go down the road of offensive coordinators, right? Like, Dabble has an awesome, wonderful passing scheme and a really questionable running scheme. We've got Greg Roman with an awesome, phenomenal, straight-to-the-point running scheme and a very physical, high-tempo attitude. But that means Fields is going to be a runner, and not everybody's going to like that. Plus, there's some questions about his passing game. I think people make too much of a fuss out of that. You know what I mean? Because I really don't think that there's any reason to question Greg Roman's credentials when you're looking at a guy who's been basically top 12 in NFL offense for like 12 years at this point. Like, you give Greg Roman Lamar Jackson as a rookie, you give him Tyrod Taylor, you give him Colin Kaepernick, you give him Alex Smith. He's been good. He's been good. He's been good. He's been good. Like, what do you want? What do you want from Greg Roman if you're not a Greg Roman fan? Is it just the fact that you don't like running the ball? I respect that more than saying it's because of Lamar somehow. You know what I mean? Like, just to defend Roman for a little bit. Like, if you don't like Roman, I feel like you got to have a good reason. Because schematically speaking, Roman's got too good of a scheme and has had results with too many different quarterbacks to just say he's bad. But at the same time, I also think that we are starting to get so far into only hiring offensive guys that we're getting lost in the weeds of what a head coach is. Does that make sense? Like, the trouble that I'm seeing here is that I don't want to hire a head coach for their offense. I mean, I think that's a good idea if it works. But otherwise, you end up with, and the trouble, Jordan, is, just to pick on something, because you're saying a leader is most important. It is, but you also have to balance that with then picking somebody who's so leadership oriented. You pick Joe Judge, right? And you end up with somebody who's leading a team into the ground, at least in my opinion. I thought the Giants had decent direction, but they are really struggling right now. And I'm with you, Jordan. I mean, you look at John Harbaugh, you look at Sean Payton's the weird one, right? Sean Payton's that rare offensive coach that's just been that offensive guy. I think OG Fields fan, you mentioned Ryan Day a couple times. I don't know enough about Day. I mean, the trouble that I have with Day is that same problem I had with Kellen Moore at this point. Like that question about talent. Ryan Day has been loaded with talent at OSU his whole experience while in Columbus. So what happens when he gets to the Bears and he's not loaded with talent? I mean, Jordan just mentioned Vrabel. You don't have to be a big Vrabel fan to respect the fact that he's getting a ton out of Tennessee. A ton out of Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill, no Derrick Henry, like a defense that's patchwork at best, is winning games they have no business winning. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of the people that are looking at Ryan Day saying, we gotta get Day, are very excited about Justin Fields. And there's nothing wrong with being excited about Justin Fields. And maybe a little over their skis. But that's okay. That's what the head coach conversation is, right? It's about dreaming big. But so, like, I get it. But another guy that comes to me, Kevin, I think, and I don't know when he'll make his transition, but I think Dave Aranda is going places in the coaching world, and I think he's probably your next Brandon Staley. Does that make sense? You mentioned Staley being a defensive guy. For me, it's about what a head coach's mindset is. And when you take a look at Dave Aranda and the way he runs Baylor, right? That Baylor team is RPO heavy. They're play action heavy. They are outside wide zone running. They are all the popular, in vogue, analytically based things that Staley is such a proponent of. Their defenses are aggressive. I mean, Jordan, just to pick on it, it's like Aranda doesn't just run his defense well. When you look at his influence on his offenses are run really smart. The things Aranda cares about, the things Aranda vibes with, they are right there with Brandon Staley. I think that hiring a 2-year college coach, former LSU defensive coordinator with no experience in the NFL is too big a stretch. The McCaskies would never do it, right? Ryan Pace would never do it. Aranda is not on his list, but keep that name in your mind. Like, honest opinion, it's one of those things that I look at and I'm saying whether Aranda makes his stake or places his stake in some massive college job in 3 years, or he lands an NFL DC job and ends up being a head coach in roughly 5. I think Dave Aranda's going to be that next defensive mind that really gets there. It's just a feeling, but I really think he's got a shot at it. He's just probably not the next Bears coach, which is fine. Like, I think that there's something to this idea, though. We talk about head coaches. It's now almost midnight. I mean, we're getting close to midnight, but I look at this head coach conversation and this balance between the right guy to lead the right thing, right? Or what is it? So you want the person, you want the attitude, you want somebody whose mindset bleeds into everything, right? I mean, to pick something, where, oh man, wait, Case, how did you get talked about or what? Case loves Devontae Adams. Like, I don't mean to pick on anybody. Let's see. But anyways, like, so I feel like I look at a whole bunch of stuff that I find myself saying, yeah, no, Ace, thank you for helping me get on track. The team needs an identity. I don't think Nagy has one. I really believe with a straight face that Nagy thinks that his identity is a flexible team and the team's not good enough. The dark horse that I have for the Bears job would be Josh McDaniels. I think that's real. Like, I'm not saying that there's smoke. I'm not saying I've heard something. I'm saying that the McCaskies strike me as exactly the people to fall in love with Josh McDaniels. I couldn't tell you why. They're either going to hate him or they're going to love him. But if McDaniels stepped out looking for a head coaching job again, it wouldn't surprise me if he could woo the Bears. Now the question is, what do you think? I mean, that's the trouble, Jordan, right? I think Josh McDaniels is the ultimate. I think he's the ultimate offensive. You're hiring an offensive coordinator to be the head coach. Like, we talk about Dabble. Dabble's going to bring a passing mindset. He's going to bring on another one. Or, like, thank you, Grant, for jumping in. First time I've seen you. Hey, hope you're doing well. Had a great Thanksgiving. But so, like, that's the thing, G, right? I'm not saying I'm hot on McDaniels. I'm saying specifically that that McDaniels to Chicago makes to me more sense than Leftwich to Chicago, where I think if it was Leftwich, it would be Dabble. Does that make sense? Like, the Dabble is so common an idea, whether it's Ben Albright or whether it's just the attitude. Like, he's aggressive and call it whatever personality you want. Dabble has the idea and attitude to work well in Chicago that I think that it would play. Like, I think if there's going to be your standard offensive coordinator, it would be Dabble. I think if Josh McDaniels is on the market, Pace and or the McCaskies are probably listening. I think if Leftwich is on the market, that's great, but he's in line behind Dabble doing the same thing, right? Both are under a totally different guy, and if anything, it freaks me out a little bit that you'd get the offensive coordinator of an offensive coach like Bruce Arians, right? At least with Dabble, you have Sean McDermott, who's the defensive culture guy, and you have Brian Dabble, who's the offense, right? And that's fine. Like, that's great. In fact, you've got somebody who's had a pretty sizable role in the leadership perspective. But exactly, Jordan, like, I'm with you. I think McDaniels could probably be successful. I love the way he approaches offense, and I think that there's something to be said for the idea that he not only worked with Brady, but he also, like, worked with Mac Jones, and he was able to kind of make Mac Jones look like Brady sometimes. I mean, not trying to go that far, and don't take that comparison too seriously. It's more to say that he's had a lot of coaching experience with all sorts of things. The question just becomes, like, what would I don't know. I would tell you that we got to get to step one first. Step one is Matt Nagy getting fired. Let's talk a little bit more Bears before we all go to bed. By the way, you want to hear more Bears stuff? Awesome. I don't know how else to say it, but other than, first of all, thank you for any support. All you wonderful people that stay up late talking Bears with me on Wednesday nights are great. I'm with you, Grant, by the way, about, like, if there's something to worry about with Josh McDaniels, it's that Indianapolis thing. Denver is a while ago. That's 10 years. He's got to have grown by then. But the Colts thing is weird. Had already hired staff too. Like, that's strange. But anyways, any support would be helpful. You guys are incredible, truly. We'll be back with Bear With Me this week, but let's get through on this other stuff. Like, let's talk just a little bit more offense, because we've got some things. This is one that's going to be hard to watch. You know what? We got to go to the back end view. So we see this big run stop, but these are exactly the kinds of plays that just happen so often. Like, if you've followed streams and this channel, you've seen too many of these, right? Where the Bears are going to hand it off right there, and Peters and Kmet are both going to look at 44. I want everybody to pay attention. Peters, Kmet, looking at 44, and neither's going to block him. I mean, Kmet's going to kind of give him a push, but 44 is going to run right through and make the play, and Kmet's going to wonder, what are we doing? What in the world? And and I'm just giggling at this point, because both of them looked at him. Both of them thought, okay, somebody's got to block this guy. And neither of them did. And so when 44 comes and makes the play, I mean, this is the Nagy stuff that, to suffice to say, drives everybody nuts, right? It feels like it's people just not even knowing where they're going with the game, or with the ball. And it really is like every game. Then they call it basic double slants. You ask yourself, where's this been? It's been there. The Lions are just really bad. Like, quick double slant to Darnell Mooney, where as 25 takes Kmet, Dalton's just going to hit the back of his drop, fire it. It's a good catch overall. Kevin, I think it's Peters too, but it looked like Peters just mentally passed it to Kmet, saying, that's too far for me. I'm not getting there. But, like, Case, I don't necessarily think, going back to that last one, it's like, oh, it's definitely Komet's fault. Komet's kind of at the epicenter of a lot of these, but I think more than anything, it's just a miscommunication. Komet definitely didn't hit that block with a full head of steam. Why not? What was the assignment? I don't know, but whatever. Like, then you get another running play after this one. Well, this is still the slant, so we can take a look at this. Let's see. So, next running play, we end up with another one. So, here's what Herbert's looking at. And if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, we bounce this, right? We go out there, you know? And so, as soon as you, as soon as you see this, the running back commits because you're thinking that this guy locked down or lock blocked at this point, and Borum's going to come out and make the block on the edge, right? Borum doesn't. Instead, he kind of just wanders that way, finally gets there, but Herbert ends up having to push back up into the pile for a gain of none, right? And so I think when you're watching Larry Borum, there is a lot of good, especially in the passing game, and there's a lot of really needs work. I mean, like, right now, in my opinion, you know, I feel like Larry Borum is If you ask me straight up, I think he's either a low-tier starter because of how good he is in the passing game, even though he's really weak in the running game, or you would consider him a swing tackle. A lot of people are starting to already crown Larry Borum as a full-time starter, which he's a young kid. He technically will be. But, like, if this is who he is, which he shouldn't be, young kid, growing, getting better, all the things I need to say, clarifications, asterisks, pretend they're all there, right? But it's the mental stuff, too. Oh, Bono, because you're going to see Goodwin come down and, he's going to come down and lock the edge just like you'd want him to. That's a wide receiver's block. Borum thinks he either thinks that's his assignment or he's looking at 25 and ends up lost in the shuffle. But I think he gets stuck on this block for a reason, and he shouldn't be. Like, this isn't Borum's, lane. He needs to be kicking out off of the wide receiver lock so that he can go get that edge, because Herbert's counting on it. He's already read it. He knows that's what this looks like. Instead, they end up all out of sorts and you lose a yard. Borum's got to improve here. Like, I really look at this thinking, like, Borum has to improve in this specific spot, but that's how it goes. Like, let me see, going back to Nagy's system is that let's see, man, Bob, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, like, at this point, let's see, the games in which they've not really practiced makes plays like those, miss blocks. I mean, it's too common. Like, other teams mess plays up, but going through the defense, it's just not near as common as it is on the Bears. Oh, also, the Bears ran no less than 4 screens, which I thought was just hilarious. I mean, how long has it been since we got free yardage from Justin Fields, right? Dalton gets it immediately. Not just the 60-yarder, but just a quick little out. It's not even a read, and we get Jakeem Grant in space, who I think is such a fun athlete. Like, I don't know if his route tree is just limited. I don't know if people just don't want to, like, I don't get why he doesn't take Damiere Byrd's reps, to use an example. I think Grant's a much better player. But even so, like, right here, quick screen, 10 yards, makes it look easy. Nice block by Whitehair, by the way. But so, quick bubble. Then you got a bit of a PA pass right here. You missed Justin a little bit. I wrote that note one time, so don't think I said that often, right? But you drop into this PA pass scenario where you're looking at a scissor concept right there and right there, where nobody's going to end up open, right? So, it's not a scissor, is it? It's more like kind of a sail thing. But so, even so, covered. Happens, right? That's not bad, you know? But when Dalton's trying to run for it, obviously you kind of wish that you had the 4-4 guy who's been playing his butt off on plays like this in particular, where you're probably going to get, let's go there, right? 6 yards or so. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, okay, is I feel like when you watch this game, you see what Fields can be. I mean, that's been the problem, hasn't it? Not to be that guy, but like, it's what Fields can be that keeps us awake at night. It's what Fields is that keeps us awake at night. It's that difference, you know? And eventually, I think he'll close the gap. I think better scheme helps. Take a look at Josh Allen. Truly. Like, Josh Allen, in a really good scheme in 2020, found it. He went from chaotic to the point of embarrassment to really surprisingly consistent and finding an identity. Fields needs that. I think Fields is tough enough to get to that point. I really believe in Justin Fields. I mean, there are a lot of things Fields does that I think are just so hard to replace. The throws that he can make, you go, I can work with that, right? But there's just enough things that whether it's Albono, I don't think he is. Like, we'll wait and see. We've got the time. My guess is Fields was limited practice today. I think they're going to try to hold him out, which is smart for the long term, but for the short term, it's going to get those Fire Nagy chants rolling. I think Peters loses his guy on this one, by the way. Now, it's not a bad loss, right? He's got 53 right here, and he grinds, he gets by him, and then Dalton has time to just get the ball out to the edge, which is fine, right? Like, it's not some huge loss, all things told. But then, on 2nd and 10... Y'all, I hate 2nd and 10 runs. I really do. You have to get so many yards to make these things analytically worth it. And then you just end up with this, right? Where, Sam Mustipher has a one-on-one block. And sure, he's feisty after the play. Maybe you could even say that should have been a personal foul. I only just saw that. But, like, the Bears are going to get a really nice little double block concept off of outside zone. It's basically just going to accidentally work that way. Actually, maybe not. It might just be straight inside zone. But either way, Mustipher has to hit this block for this play to work. So you get the play started. Double team. That one's going well. That one's going well. Hey, Mustipher got him. Monty's thinking, I've got a lane. And he doesn't. Mustipher loses that battle, and now it's 3rd and 12. Yay. Right? I always laugh at that stuff. I mean, like, the danger of calling a 2nd and 10 run is that exact kind of play. And so, right, Bob? So then, basic pass, nothing's particularly open. Maybe Mooney is. Like, I watched this one. Mooney right here looks to me like if Dalton had theoretically gone full Fields, this is Mooney. If Dalton had gone full Fields, he might have had this receiver open. Maybe. Like, after this spot, right here. So he waits out that safety. And if you were absolutely locked onto the receiver, right, you might be able to step in and rip it between these two defenders. But you might take a sack. And as we know, there are too many Bears fans out there that hate the fact that Fields has taken so many sacks. And so, I feel like this is the funny dance about a quarterback. You know? Oh, Gesicki's great. I love... I personally think, what is it? We're talking about... Oh, yeah, good. Cool. But so, like, I thought for a second you might be saying, Jordan, that Gesicki wasn't a weapon. I think Gesicki's fun. But so anyways, let's see, going back to this. Like, anyways, Dalton checks it down. This is the normal quarterback thing to do, right? And we could say, Bryce, that Dalton doesn't have that arm strength. I mean... There's something to that, don't get me wrong. But also, Fields is going to hunt that play until the day he dies. Because in Fields' mind, who cares about getting sacked back here? We want these yards, you know? Whoa, bad line. We want to get to there. I want to make that throw because then our offense stays on the field. Instead, Dalton checks it down, which, hey, there's something to be said about, like, you never know. Like, yes, it's 3 defenders, but it's a lot of open space. Even so, there's a balance. You can't always be taking your checkdowns. Sometimes you just end up there, which, hey, Bears could have gone for this. Like, just throwing that out there from, I think it was 3rd and 12. You get 9 yards. Now it's 4th and 3. You're sitting at the 50. You can go for it. It's not impossible, right? They just don't. Even so, Like, they get lined up in punt formation here. Looks like it's actually 4th and 2, so it's really makeable, right? If you knew you were going forward on 4th down, that check down makes too much sense. It leaves your option open. But, Bob, it looks like he gives it to Monty because he specifically sees that the concept is going to get Kmet open. Like, while Monty's there too, this defender, Analzane, is tied up. And then this defender is tied up. So with both of their momentum backwards, kicking the ball out to your tight end makes a lot of sense, purely because he's on this right-hand side. If Monty had been there, he would have thrown it to Monty. And yes, Bryce, that's the silent count snap. That's Daniels saying, we're ready to go. He taps Musfer on the butt saying, snap it when you're ready. And then they go on that. But so you watch, Dalton's going to put his leg up and down. That's, we're good to go. And then Daniels, he's looking back and watching it. It's literal, right? Give it just a second. So Daniels is literally standing up watching Dalton, right? Like, he's got his eyes on Dalton. So he sees that knee come up and down. That's why he gets in his position, taps him, and Mustafa just snaps it on sight. Some centers will look through their legs. Others, they just let the guy tap him, just like that. I always wonder how centers vary their snap counts from doing that. But, yeah, Bob, I'm with you. If I could make it Monty, I mean, I wish that they had Monty doing checkdowns 100% of the time because he's just so dangerous when you give him that kind of space. But so, let's quickly do some other stuff. Let's see. Basic read, water gets... Yeah, okay, so let's go through just a few more. So, this one, if nothing else, I thought this was interesting because the key here is it's a muddy read that comes from Mooney running basically that. Montgomery's going to run out here off of a curl. I think, don't quote me on it, Kmet is headed to the corner right there with Grant coming in orbit motion. But the key that I always find really interesting, yeah, right, Grant? But so the key for me that I find cool about the NFL and interesting about quarterbacking, right, is that you end up with reads where sometimes Dalton's going to take a look and he's going to go, I have no idea what's going on. Like, it's not that he doesn't have an idea, it's that he doesn't know. And most of these quarterbacks, if they see what they would call a muddy read, right? Where's Analzane going? I don't know. Do I have a certainty of where Mooney's going? Yeah, I think he's headed right into coverage. Is Montgomery open? Well, if you use the power of the freeze frame, obviously it looks like it, right? Like, it sure looks like if Dalton had just driven his foot, he could get the ball there. Instead, he just takes his check down. Like, 100% he says it's better sometimes to have an on-time throw than the perfect read. So even though Jesse James kind of looks, well, that's actually impossible because he didn't look open until the ball got thrown. But even though it looks like you could have threaded the ball to Montgomery for a first, he's just going to kick the ball out to Jakeem Grant, and hey, you know what? It works. Jakeem Grant's a pretty good athlete. He goes out there, he gets you 15 yards. I find it fun looking through quarterbacking and remembering that sometimes you do the easy in rhythm thing even though it's wrong, and it'll work out. Like, sometimes you can just trust your teammate to make a play, and Jakeem Grant, number 17, will come through for you. He'll break a tackle, he'll get upfield, he'll get you 10 yards. You know what I mean? But that's one of those, like, neat parts of quarterbacking where when people start to kind of pick apart Justin Fields and say everything is this or that, everything is this, everything is that, so on and so forth, I feel like we can get lost in it. You know, sometimes you make the smart in-time play and it works out for you. But so, let's see here. 25 makes a really nice play on a curl over. Like, let me see. Oh, is this the one I'm... Yes, now I see it. This is a good play by Mooney. I mean, I think it's obvious, right? It's a really nice route. It beats, it's a short hook plus a deep hook with a clear out right there, and you get Mooney open on basically a glorified over route. Dalton hits him nice and in stride. I would like more of this, especially with JF1 playing. But it's fun to see Mooney run these routes in the first place. And it's the rare time where I feel like this running back play action actually works in the play's favor. Not only is it the perfect concept for the coverage grant, but I love the fact that Dalton is able to offer this play action fake, which Nalzane and the linebacker actually seem to honor because Montgomery's running this route. So that play action fake actually works in its favor as he's able to then run what turns into like a quick halfback angle route, draws the linebacker down, and opens up that throwing seam for Mooney's ball, which hits him right in the hands. Like, credit to the Bears. That looked really good. And then we got a curling over where, like, you end up with a good little Borum route. I think Borum has a nice route here, too. Like, takes on the defensive end. His feet look so much better in pass pro than they do in running. Like, watching Borum move, that's a good kick step. That's a good job getting in front of your guy. Like, that works, you know? But so, then moving forward, just a smidge. Gustavo, great seeing you. Hello. We're going to wrap up here fairly soon because we need to. But so, this play, is it this one? No. But so, let's see here. Give it just a little bit. We get to one of the best plays in the Bears, like Rolodex that they called today. Censored Borum also failed because he was huge, if memory serves. But yes, let's see. This was one of my favorite concepts. So what you're gonna see that they run is I don't actually remember what Bird does. Forget Bird. The point is that Kmet and Graham are going to run what looks like kind of a double China deep post, but once they figure out, let's just run the play. Let me just show it to you. So with everybody running these routes right here, you've got Bird running a clear out, occupying number 39. You've got Kmet running a deep post, occupying the corner. You've got Jimmy Graham running a deep post, occupying the safety. Or do you? Well, you've actually got, and I wish I could like do some cool rewind, but what you've actually got is, yes, you've got that. Yes, you've got that. But Jimmy Graham is about to curl back into here, which it's funny you mentioned that case. What is Jimmy Graham running? Well, it sure catches the safety off guard. And this throw, Romo, or I think it was Aikman, called it low. It's perfect. I mean, maybe it's just a smidge low, right? But you're trying to get your guy down. This is a really creative call. Like, this is the kind of stuff that's fun because this is one route playing off of a whole bunch of other routes. You're catching this safety entirely out of position, knowing that his assignment is way off. And so the throw comes, Bears catch it, 1st and 10 at the 13. Good play. And then the immediate next play, Kmet's going to fan a block, which, that's how it goes, isn't it? Make one good play, you're going to have to take a negative play after that. And I think you're probably right, Case. I mean, it looks like it, or if it was an option route, that would make a lot of sense. Gustavo, I really like a lot of the things Desai's doing. I think he's got nothing to work with. Nothing at all. So take a look at Kmet here. It's a passing play. The block does not work. Like, Kmet gets... Oh, no, it's a run play. And Kmet just doesn't get a ton of this. I clearly wrote that one wrong in my notes. Which, hey, not every tight end is going to. 85. He doesn't get... Or he seems like he stays so close to there that by the time he gets at Nalzane, he just doesn't get much of it, which drops him. Is it an illegal formation penalty? Is it? But anyways, I have no idea. Yeah, he just kind of throttles. But so anyways, let's see. This one, Dalton's decision was fine. We're not going to do too much more. We'll hit some highlights afterwards. But I find these plays interesting too because Jimmy's route stems up. He's got the safety flat-footed. Dalton liking the end zone corner. I like it too. I just want the throw to be better. So the throw ends up well over Jimmy. You take a look from the end zone angle. It's still not close. Like, You watch it here. I like Jimmy Graham in this matchup with a linebacker on him and a corner on his back. 100%. Like, letting that thing go. You just want that throw to be a little bit more competitive. You get the idea. I don't want to hose down Dalton for being a perfectly normal veteran quarterback. That's not the purpose of this stream. But then you call curls on the end zone. Yes, it's curls. Yes, it's curls. And again, you don't mind what you or like Dalton's decision. Maybe he could fit that in, but him being wary of the second defender, I get you. Even so, like him targeting tight end on corner mismatch, yeah, I get it too, but you can't do this. I think we can all agree with that, right? Like you can't throw that. They just drop it, which works. I actually thought there was a chance that he caught it. Like I thought there was a chance that Jesse James caught a touchdown just off of a lucky break because Lions, right? But you can't be throwing that. Like I'm giving him credit on the other one that it was a wonderful play by the corner, but this is unacceptable. Like you can't throw that on like at the end zone. It's very bad. But it doesn't take a genius. It doesn't take a football genius. Like this is where I feel like what do you want to critique, right? Like do you want to critique the fact that Dalton doesn't take the first option available to him? Maybe. Do you want to critique Dalton's decision? Well, it's a tight end on a corner. And not to mention, it's also like Jesse James is coming back to the ball. Like, remember, the first down marker's here. We're all crazy about the end zone, as we should be, but like Jesse James comes back to the ball, it's a first down. Like, you're fine, you know? Jesse just goes this way. Explain that one to me. Like, truly. For some reason, the adjustment for Jesse is go out, which is not what Dalton thinks as he throws straight at him, and his defender just works right in front of him. Like, I'm fine with the throw, really. The decision's okay. They're just so woefully not on the same page. Blame Nagy? Yes. Blame Jesse James? A little bit. Blame Dalton? You gotta. You know what I mean? Like, it's the sort of thing that I look at, and it just feels like, why? Okay, you want me to be really critical? Why isn't that good Kmet? Why isn't Kmet starting? Like, why isn't Kmet on this play? What did he do wrong? Like, what's going on? Why is it Mooney and Goodwin and Bird and Jesse James? It's not Jimmy Graham. It's not Cole Kmet. It's Jesse James. And there's a point where you say, why? Why is it the third string tight end? Like, kind of like, oh my gosh, yeah, kind of like Reinhardt is saying, why? You know, like, the Jesse James is the third stringer. He's got more experience with Fields. Derek, I love it because it might be what Nagy's thinking, but what in the world? That's the thing. Like we extended Jimmy Graham's contract into the future so that we could put Jesse James and Jesper Horsted in on the red zone. It's beyond me. I mean, thank goodness Jimmy Graham caught a touchdown, not just for ROI, but because if memory serves, somebody tell me I'm wrong, that would mean before Jimmy Graham had caught a touchdown, we had one touchdown from Jesper Horsted and one touchdown from Jesse James, and that's the tight end's touchdowns. Like, there's an element of it that's it's just nonsense. Like, truly, this adjustment, or the throw where Dalton puts it, is fine. All he has to do is take a couple steps forward, and it's an easy catch. But they're just not on the same page. And we're 12 games into the season. That can't happen, you know? Like, I want to pride myself eventually, even now. Like, whenever I have the chance, I want to pride myself on offering actual insight. You don't need me to tell you that's a bad throw. You just need me to remind you that's unacceptable. You know what I mean? 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception won't show you that throw didn't work. The tipped one to Analzane didn't work. Let me see if there's any others that are really, like, worth talking about. Nothing that I specifically have, but I feel like the Bears basically just end up bailed out. We can watch it. There's not even a ton to like really go over, and it's too late here. Anzalone, thank you, thank you, because I'm out here embarrassing myself. My brain keeps swapping letters that don't need swapping. But so let's see here. Jakeem Grant takes this, and let's just honestly, we'll let the tape roll. We'll kind of just talk about stuff. They line up, of course, starting out with Andy as the H-back, because why wouldn't it be, right? Um, I'm only just seeing this now. What's the point of a formation that has Andy Dalton behind the running back? Why are we doing that? What is the point? Is it a flea flicker? Like, is that really what we're threatening? That's just weird to me. Oh, he could have caught the option. Man, imagine the chanting if David Montgomery pulls this and pitches it to Andy Dalton. That's what I want. That's what I want to see, Reinhardt. I want to see I want to see Montgomery pull it and pitch it to Andy, who takes it. And, I mean, not even to the house, but yeah, I mean, exactly, Grant. I mean, I get it. It's trying to figure out a different way to use the Wildcat, but that, yeah, I want to see that with Fields too, Case. But I love the concept of a whole bunch of like those exact kinds of looks that you run them with Andy anyways, because well, he's our backup. We believe in him. But the Bears just ground out yardage here, honestly. Like, there is one. There are a couple throws that we'll go through, I guess, over, because there are two that I'm thinking about. But exactly, John. If we push ourselves to the brink of what we can remember, then they'll never fix it. Jordan, it's too big of a conversation. We can't do it at midnight right now. There are ideas, but also I almost don't want to think about how we'd fix the offense too soon, or I'm just gonna get even sadder as I watch the Cardinals game. But Bears did a decent job with motion, but honestly, this was just kind of that moment, and just the Bears went off on this. Looking at the tape, or the tail of the tape, like the play-by-play, is wild, because holy moly, the Bears won on an 18-play drive, and as you guys are probably seeing, it was not all good. You know, it's not like this was some kind of winner of a drive. They just made their way down the field in the slowest way possible, and they burned a ton of time doing it, and they ended up icing the whole game away, because here they run mesh. Dalton gets away from it, makes a really nice play with the ball in his hands. Like, credit to Bird and Dalton. That's the second time that they worked away from that sort of thing. Let's watch Larry Borum. Borum actually kind of gets beat pretty badly. Like, just to pause the flow of this just for a hot second, Borum does a pretty bad job with his hand placement here. Like, you would hope that he gets his hands, obviously, on the defensive lineman. I don't want to be too hardcore at this point, but this is the ultra bad, if you would, for for an offensive lineman, because you can't do that. Yeah, exactly. Oversetting, Jordan. That hand placement's really key, because without placing your hands properly, you obviously can't push any force into the defensive player, and so you get blown off the ball. But Dalton and Bird make a nice little play, so he gets so from there they miss a throw. I mean, like, this drive is so funny. Yeah, that was a nice ball from Dalton, Case, and then you get the next one. You know, like, immediately just nope. Also, it looks like Whitehair ends up on the ground here. Let's see how it happens. Oh, he just gets thumped. Honestly, this whole ball is just this whole drive is hilarious, because every time the Bears do something well, they do something kind of poorly, and then there you go, right? But yeah, no, exactly, Reinhardt. Like, Dalton's got to run Fields' playbook so that then Fields can run Dalton's playbook, because they'll just never see it coming, right? Let's see, is this a second down run? I think it might be. It is second down. We're running the ball, and it works because sometimes it will, right? I feel like the second down run thing, by the way, personal opinion, I can't tell if it's just the Bears or if it's league wide, right? But I feel as if second down runs work just enough to keep coaches doing it, even though over time they're not doing well. Does that make sense? If on average you lose too many of them, but sometimes you get a first down, the coach will keep thinking about the sometimes. At least in my perspective, that seems to be the case. And I get it. There's a degree of you got to do it occasionally so that you can so that you can keep the defense believing that you might run it. But at the same time, what if they don't think you'll run it? What if they think you might pass the ball to the edge? Like, there's tons of stuff you could do. Nagy's not even, and by the way, talking about Mike Fury, I don't even know if he's Nagy Jr. He's just Nagy's friend, right? Like, they roomed together in college, if memory serves. Let's take a look at Kmet's route here. You know what? This is... Can I be really honest with you guys? I don't care, like, about route running sometimes when a guy runs a basic, like, it's not even a juke. It's like a curl that he just sort of drifts into space on. But at the same time, Cole Kmet running straight through a blitzer, stopping, and just getting the ball out in open space, it's good enough footwork. It's footwork that's getting better. I don't think he could do this as a rookie. Not near as cleanly, right? But you don't need Travis Kelce to do that, right? Like, you don't need Zach Ertz to make that play. It's simple. It's probably not second round grade if you wanted to get hardcore, I guess. But when you've got a tight end that can make blocks, like, especially as Kmet keeps developing in that vein, and he can also get split out and just run to space, like, it's not bad. That's not a great way to spin it as bad. But exactly, Reinhardt. I feel like right now, if the worst thing that you could say about Cole Kmet, in my honest opinion, right, is Kmet right now is the jack of all trades and the master of none. If you're looking for somebody to be a master of anything, it isn't Kmet, right? Like, that I think is the thing that people are getting the most hung up on. Is Kmet the fastest tight end? He is not. Is he the most physical tight end? He is not. Is he the most fluid tight end? He is not. Is he the best blocker? He is not. If, like, is he this? Is he that? Well, he's kind of all of them. Like, case just for you, so that you can see the man that my father called Big Red, tote the pill. Like, let's get another view on that, as Andy's going to chug out the yardage. But so, the big thing, like you're saying, censored, I mean, not only does it take time to get going, Kmet's producing right now. It's not pretty production. It really isn't. Like, we don't need to pretend like Kmet's doing so great, but exactly, Reinhardt, something you picked on. We forget that a second-round pick is not supposed to be Jalen Johnson. We're stoked when it is. But a second-round pick is the average of Jalen Johnson and a bust. and within that frame, Kmet is undoubtedly a hit. I mean, I would tell you he was a single last year and is stretching himself into a double already. Like, just in the world of what I am seeing on tape, Kmet is an extremely young kid that is going to produce a, if memory serves, it is like top 15 receiving season on the team with the lowest passing yards in the NFL. So there you go. And exactly, I mean, Grant, you're right. Like, there's a ton of this stuff that if there was a defender buzzing that zone, he's not open. That's why if there's something that I want to see Kmet doing, right, I want to see Kmet learn to just go to space. I want to see Kmet learn to have an option route where he goes out and all he does is just make a play, right? Like, the play call is Kmet's going to find a spot and you're going to throw it to him, and he does it. That works for me, you know? But it takes time. It takes learning. It takes being able to read a defense as well as a quarterback or better. And that's not something you usually do as a sophomore, which is okay. Like, I'm willing to wait and see with a lot of the Kmet stuff. I really am. I think a lot of people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater at a solid player, and they're starting to worry too much about stuff that I don't know if it's that important, like contracts, right? Like we'll figure out Komet's contract or whether he was worth it later. Um, well, Reinhardt, not in this offense. They sure aren't. Like if that's what you're talking about, but are you meaning like natural talent, for instance? Because I'm more thinking about like Jason Witten, right? Um, let me see, because I'm reading what Case just said. In production, extremely low target rate, and us having variance on defense. Yeah, right. I mean, like, there's a point where I'm very curious as to what Komet's role would be in a healthier offense, because I don't really know. Like, I think it would be better. There's no reason to think it wouldn't be. But within this offense, he's about to be the 17th highest receiving tight end in the NFL, I think, which you could do worse, you know? But so let's take some quick things. Look, I don't need to show you a bunch of Dalton making mistakes. I don't think anybody cares. Just know it did happen. Oh, Ejax. Gotcha. Yes, I hear you. I thought we were talking about Kmet. I was like, I think I'm confused. But so, yeah. No, I mean, like, honestly, this offense, oh man, no, that's one. That's it. Let's see. I have to find that one. That's worth it. Let's see. Oh, 3250. There's at least one commit play we do have to talk about. So this is about to be maybe the most far-fetched topic that we're going to have to talk through, right? But so Komet is going to run stick on this play while we talk about Komet, right? But so Komet's going to run a stick route. It looks like that. And I just want to point out Komet's footwork because this was the best stick route or the best like break I've seen Komet break on in quite some time. I'm not about to say it's the turf. I'm actually about to attribute it to learning. It's silly that we're talking about this, right? Like, it's hilarious that I'm really talking about Komet's stick route footwork. But Komet gets scrutinized for generating zero separation all the time, and on this route, he generated quite a bit of separation, you know? Like, 2 feet in the ground, full 90 degrees, no rounded route. This is actually pretty good. Like, now, is it a Hall of Fame route? No, nobody said that. But like Grant's kind of coming at, his routes used to look like that. Like, big bend, right? And right here, it's a very nice little snap hip. Comes out, breaks back on it, breaks a tackle, and then even goes out there and gets a couple more yards after catch. You get the idea. Like, it's a solid route. That's it. Now I'm belaboring it. There's the only thing that we have to do. The only other thing that we have to do is we have to find the stretchy shirt, because I did see it. Let me see. It's one of the first plays of a half, I think. I had to have highlighted it. Let's see. Oh, there's one other that we have to talk through. It's 3440 or 3340. Look at this snap. Everybody just watch Mustafa real fast because this is a rough one, right? Take this look. Bang. That's the snap. Dalton does good to get it out at all, honestly. Commending, like, at getting it out at all. But, like, that's the third one. That's snap. It's 3, right? It's not more than that. But that's the third. It's not a poor snap. It's an unacceptable snap. It's a fumble in some situations. If the nose tackle's on his game, it could be a fumble. Like, this is a shotgun snap that hits him straight in the butt. And from there, it's up to God where this thing goes, you know? It just happens to roll somewhat gently back to Dalton, but Mustafer's going to cause a turnover one of these days. Like, that's the thing, OG. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, I get it. He's Mustafer's guy, but it is a little beyond me saying Mustafer's playing really good ball right now when I feel like Mustafer can't hold a solo block, and Olin Kurtz, in case to be specific, Mustafer can't hold a solo block. Mustafer seems to botch a snap once every other game nowadays, like, and a huge botch at that. He's really struggling in the run game. But yeah, Derek, that's a good point. But so then I did find this. Here it is. It is. Here we go. Here we go. This is what we're all here for. This is 12:30. This is why we're alive. It's so that we can watch David Montgomery's shirt get stretched an absolutely unbelievable distance. I mean, like, let's get a measurement. Let's get a measurement on this. Let's see if we can take a guess. Like, all right, so shirt stretch. That's a good point. Okay, so it breaks about 3 yards with at least a yard over there. So if we go like hypotenuse, you're looking at almost a 4.5-yard shirt stretch, like 10 foot at least, Grant. Like, this is a long. This could be up to 12 feet. Yeah, exactly. So if you go with the diagonal, somewhere between 4.5 yards, this long shirt stretch run picks up about 5 total. But man, oh man, like, just most valuable shirt indeed. Monty obviously just too strong, and you know what? Credit to him. Credit to this guy, right? Look at him not giving up. Look at him thinking, maybe, just maybe, the shirt will bring him down, right? Maybe the shirt won't snap. I'll grab him by the leash, rip him down. This is what taking the kneecap off looks like, right? This is what I'll take a chunk out of him is, Grant, that's a great joke about a stretch run. But this Lions defender, he's not thinking, oh man, I should let this guy's shirt go. He's thinking, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And then it snaps and his dreams are down. But that is hilarious. Let's see. And add out, this is our shirt. But so, I think this play is just fun. How do I make shirts this stretchy? How do I get everybody in our comment section a stretchy shirt like this? Is it possible? Is it reasonable? Like, do I just put a piece of tape on the end? Like, look at this thing. Monty has not stopped. Serious credit to this guy. I really feel like he's got something. You know what I mean? Like, he believes in himself. He's got it. He's locked in. Like, super ready to bring him down. But at this point, to suffice to say, we're not doing much Bears analysis at this stage. But yeah, maybe I gotta DM Monty. Gotta figure out how to get a stretchy shirt endorsement deal, to which he's gonna be like, who are you? Aren't you the guy that doesn't want to pay me? I'll be like, no, I never said that. But anyways, let's see. Man, the new Russell sweatboard. It's all about wristbands, right? It's all about big gear. Man, I gotta ask. Okay, so chat, what if I'll just play the footage right here as we talk about it. All right, so do you believe that there is a correlation between sweet gear and playing well? For instance, if Foles had never taken off the dark visor, would he have succeeded in Chicago? I'm just asking. Obviously, it's goofy. This isn't a real opinion. A dark visor shouldn't have anything to do with it, but man, Foles walked out with that dark visor and ended Atlanta. And I always wonder, like, uh, Bob, I do think he was. Like, to be fair, Foles had to change visors, right? Well, Foles was popping off in Atlanta, to be complete or to be real. Like, he was going crazy. He just threw an interception on a jump ball that I think we all would say that, like, if any quarterback had thrown it, you're hoping Allen Robinson catches it anyways. But like, it was so funny cartwheels watching him walk out with that visor, because I feel like I feel like he walked out and everybody went, "Oh my gosh, why is Foles in a dark visor?" And good point, Derek. I mean, to be fair, Atlanta has definitely earned their finisher moniker. But so, Sebastian, that's also a good point. Like, talking through like Kindle Vildor's drip strategy. Let's see, which throw? Oh, yeah, if you're talking about Bird on this one, Andy makes these plays. Honestly, I feel like there's something to be said for Fields kind of learning from Andy about the scramble drill, which sounds ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, what would Justin Fields have to learn from Andy Dalton on the scramble drill? And honestly, I mean, Andy kind of finds it. Like, credit to Andy. He actually does a decent job on these things. But either way, like, we're at the end of the road here, which is great. Y'all, you're phenomenal. I love hanging out with y'all. I hope you had a good time. Let me know, whether it's Twitter DMs, YouTube comments, anything else, what you want to see coming up. Hopefully I'll have some more time this weekend to throw something together. But the Bears are definitely in a weird phase right now, so I don't blame anybody. If you want to take a break, know that I'm always here for you next year. If, like, or I'll see you in the off season. It could be whatever. I'll still be here, because where there's a Bears game, there's me breaking it down. But the Bears are 4-7, probably on the way to 4-8. But that's not too surprising, and we'll have more Justin Fields footage to come through later. But until then, you guys are awesome. We'll catch you soon. Get some sleep, bear down, and we'll see you next time.